Under the glaring eyes of the red-haired director, the Aquarius director did not continue speaking. Instead, he drew a blade to slice through the void before him, carving open a rift leading to the Virgin Branch. The Scarlet Hair Lady of the Virgin Branch is a cleaner with virtually no weaknesses. Currently, there is no method to bypass the 32 guardians crafted by the director of Taurus, truly harming her. But no matter how powerful or tightly protected the abnormal object is, it ultimately relies on its own energy as fuel to function perfectly, and that is her only weakness. The Leon value of the Scarlet Hair Lady is not infinite. When she is fully driving the Slaughter Blood Hair, the power she can allocate to the 32 guardians naturally reduces sharply, almost to nothing. Lacking the driving power of her up to 70-point Leon value, no matter how many tricks the 32 guardians can guard against, it's ultimately just a mid to high level abnormal object. Breaking it would be all too easy. Wait a moment. Seeing the Aquarius director seemingly wanting to leave, the raven-masked man couldn't help but call out to him, then looked at the red-haired director whose soul was partially separated, unable even to speak, and asked with hesitation yet eagerness, "Aquarius, are you just going to leave like this? Aren't you going to do something more?" "No, I have other matters to attend to." Glancing at the raven-masked man, the Aquarius director let out a faint chuckle, comprehending his meaning. He then stepped into the space rift before him, disappearing instantly, leaving only a voice as cool as the line of frost in his words. "Whatever you want to do, don't ask me. Just take action yourself. It was you who said it." Upon hearing the Aquarius director's response, the raven-masked man was suddenly elated. As the current director of the Virgin Branch, ranking stably among the top 5 forces in the Cleanup Bureau, the Scarlet Hair Lady naturally had a name in the Slaughter King Association. If he could seize this major opportunity and finish her off by chance, it might be an accomplishment greater than eliminating a royal family. Rubbing his hands with excitement, shrugging his shoulders, the raven-masked man, with only stumps of arms left, circled around the frowning and silent red-haired director like a goofy seal, then circled around again, and once more, but still dared not make a move. The raven-masked man was willing to swear by his authority that he truly wasn't just cowardly or fearing death. It was mainly due to her renowned reputation. This true god before him had eliminated more than a few, if not too many to count on one hand. Though she seemed unable to act with millions of souls gripping her, if she encountered true life-threatening danger, and was compelled to release 1 or 2 million souls to free part of her hair, considering his current severely weakened condition, guaranteed death. Despite the high possibility of being counterattacked and killed, with the achievement of killing the Scarlet Hair Lady right before him, as the god of chaos and calamity, the raven-masked man ultimately could not resist the temptation, raising his seal-like arms. SSSS. Accompanied by a slight hiss like a leak, the raven-masked man's right arm disintegrated, turning into a small stream of fine wind-blown sand, which awkwardly brushed past the neck of the red-haired director. Yet even with her soul forcibly separated, the red-haired director's body still leaned back slightly, successfully evading the threat to her throat. Unfortunately, she only avoided half, as the sand glanced her below the collarbone, corroding a 20-centimeter-long, thumb-wide hideous wound. "Stop!" Coming upon that ghastly wound with flesh twisted inside out, Leon, whose soul was nearly blasted apart by the power of the King of Nightmares, could not refrain from an angry shout, then gritted his teeth, shouting to the red-haired director, "Let me go! Quickly release me! Don't be foolish! It's not about releasing you." Moved by Leon's request to abandon himself, the red-haired director could not help but silently close her eyes in helplessness. "It's not just you that I've seized, but also the people from the Virgin Branch, 3 deputy directors almost true god level, and 3 level 1 cleaners with over 50 Leon. Their weight is not lighter than yours." Fortunately, the capacity of this masked man has been significantly depleted earlier and has dropped from true god strength, finding it hard to directly harm my soul. As long as I sustain a certain amount of injury, I can temporarily release the souls of those 3 fools, briefly activate 32 guardians, to heal my body, hence not having to worry about being finished by him. Moreover, since Lyra broke the Aquarius plan, The headquarters received advance notice. The Sagittarius director has always been monitoring the situation here, and even if I haven't managed to notify him, such was the commotion he must have noticed. Reinforcements should arrive soon. Seemingly sensing something amiss, the silver-haired old lady lying in a crystal coffin suddenly opened her eyes and inquired anxiously. Andrew, I suddenly feel a little uneasy. Is something wrong on Olivia's side? Rest assured. Upon hearing the director of Taurus's inquiry, sitting cross-legged in front of a mirror, the Sagittarius director waved his hand without turning his head, maintaining a calm voice. I have been watching all along. Nothing has happened at the Virgin Branch. It's good that nothing happened. Upon receiving the Sagittarius director's reply, the director of Taurus in the crystal coffin couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief, then softly expressed some disappointment. By the way, can Olivia really not come? You know, in my heart, she's almost like a daughter to me. I truly hope to see her once more before ascending the throne. But she really cannot come. Shaking his head as he faced away from the director of Taurus, the Sagittarius director spoke with some helplessness. Joan, you are more aware than I am of how long I've prepared for this plan. How many costs I have borne. Aquarius knows us too well. No matter how much preparation we do, gaps will always be found. In such circumstances, only by deceiving even our people can we completely fool him, and now everyone, including all 80-some deputy directors, believes you will ascend the throne in 10 days. Yet, you are directly ascending today, before all the deputy directors are fully in place. All right, I know. Closing her eyes with a headache, the director of Taurus sighed and said, ascending 10 days early ensures my safety, allows Aquarius to fail in his attempt, and allows for the mass extermination of the Slaughter King Association's personnel. After all, bypassing the Watcher's Palace and forcing descent requires quite some time, so even if they see my ascension, they wouldn't have time to withdraw. Moreover, after my ascension, with these assembled deputy directors at HQ, you'll lead them in targeting the members of the Slaughter King Association who descended. Hopefully, this would secure 2 or 3 generations of peace. Andrew, you've repeated this so many times that I've memorized it. I understand you are right, but I genuinely want to see Olivia. She will understand. Interrupting the director of Taurus's words, looking at the millions of souls held by the scarlet hair in the mirror, the Sagittarius director closed his eyes, his facial muscles slightly clenched, then spoke calmly. Joan, the greatest danger has passed. You can start ascending the throne now. All right? Upon hearing the director of Sagittarius's urging, the director of Taurus couldn't help but sigh regretfully, then folded his hands in front of his abdomen, calming himself without speaking further. Just as the director of Sagittarius turned around, preparing to close the lid of the crystal coffin, the director of Taurus inside suddenly opened his eyes, somewhat apprehensive as he reminded. By the way, for that batch of materials I left behind earlier, remember to distribute them properly for me. Got it. The director of Sagittarius nodded and said, those who might inherit the secret techniques of Taurus directly give each one a share, right? Give Leon a bit more. After pondering slightly, the director of Taurus in the crystal coffin hesitantly said, I haven't found the abnormal object I promised him yet, so I should compensate him well. Moreover, although the abnormal object he created is somewhat peculiar in effect, it has potential. I have high hopes for him to take my position in the future. All right, then give him 2 shares. I will also give him a copy of your notes on the secret techniques. Thank you. Having received the promise, the director of Taurus nodded in satisfaction and closed his eyes. Just as the director of Sagittarius was about to close the lid, he was stopped by a hand. Andrew, make sure to keep the Bacchus pearl safe. Like an elder at home who worries about everything, the director of Taurus grabbed the lid of the crystal coffin with a worried expression. No matter how Olivia makes a fuss, you cannot give it to her. It's fine if others have it, but if it gets into her hands. All right, Joan. I remember all of this. The director of Sagittarius said helplessly, whether it's the items you left behind, the candidates for inheriting the secret techniques, or the unfinished abnormal objects you've created. All the things you're concerned about, I will handle them one by one, and I won't let you down. Moreover, you'd better speed up a bit. If you miss the time, it may take another 6 months to prepare. You know, the Watcher's Palace has had many problems recently. The sooner you go, the sooner we can feel at ease. Upon hearing this, the director of Taurus responded, then released his grip, lying back into the crystal coffin, allowing the director of Sagittarius to close the lid, and then, with closed eyes, said, Andrew, I've remembered something else. Sigh. What's the matter this time? It's about the paper slips sent down by the Watcher's Palace. With closed eyes, the director of Taurus said, starting from early last month, the paper slips sent down by the Watcher's Palace have less and less clear information, as if they've lost their warning capability. Regarding the warning capability, the director of Sagittarius frowned upon hearing this and then asked, are you referring to the annihilation of the Kralik Kingdom and the Ascension Assessment hosted by Pisces? The director of Taurus nodded with closed eyes, worriedly saying, logically, events involving the destruction of a human kingdom and turmoil across the entire dream realm should trigger the watch effect of the Watcher's Palace, giving us some prior warning. But we've received no information. Before these two events completely occurred, all we got from the Watcher's Palace were 2 paper slips missing crucial content, which couldn't clearly express anything, and no warnings from the palace dwellers. With the contemplative gaze from the director of Sagittarius, the director of Taurus, eyes closed, said, Andrew, I'm wondering if those 2 paper slips with unclear content were meant to warn about these events, but were somehow blocked by something? That possibility is unlikely. The director of Sagittarius frowned upon hearing this and said, that's the Watcher's Palace, which even in its earlier weaker stage, couldn't be breached by the 4 pillar gods together. Now, hosting many palace dwellers, it's only stronger. How could it possibly be blocked? In my view, it seems more like the population of the Kralik Kingdom was too small, and thanks to Leon and Edward's timely rescue, there was no large-scale casualty, which didn't trigger the Watcher's Palace. Regarding the Dream Realm, it's similar. The Dream Realm creatures, even if consumed, can be reborn from the Dream Realm. As long as the Dream Realm exists, it's not true death, hence no trigger from the Watcher's Palace. As for those 2 strange paper slips, I'm more inclined to a lack of maintenance, causing minor operational issues within the Watcher's Palace, which resulted in communication breakdown. Just repair it slightly, and it should adjust back. That's true. Nodding in acknowledgement of the director of Sagittarius's reasoning, the director of Taurus was about to say more, but suddenly felt a lightness pour over his body. The director of Sagittarius's even breathing had vanished, replaced by a distant and hollow peculiar sound. Has it started? The director of Taurus, realizing something unusual, took a deep breath, then opened his tightly closed eyes again, and what he saw was no longer the translucent crystal coffin, but the endless night sky filled with stars. Tap! With the sound of a heel stepping on something like glass, the director of Taurus stepped onto an invisible staircase, lightly moving forward. The splendid galaxy before her unexpectedly zoomed in at an unimaginable speed, suddenly appearing in front of her. So this is Ascension. Squinting at the far colder than imagined starry sky and the invisible palace woven by countless interconnected stars, the director of Taurus sighed faintly, glanced nostalgically back at her path, then stepped forward, never looking back. As she left, watching the director of Taurus in the crystal coffin seemingly feeling cold and slightly curled up her body, the director of Sagittarius sat cross-legged beside the crystal coffin, gazing silently at the speechless old friend, internally apologizing. Even with just the soul going forward, to reach the Watcher's Palace hidden deep in the starry river requires ascending over 18,000 steps, completely dispelling any remnant humanity, likely taking over 4 hours. And to ensure this process is not interrupted, during these 4 hours, I must stay beside your body, guarding against any possible attacks. As for Olivia, I can only apologize for now. Thinking to this point, the director of Sagittarius couldn't help but turn his head, glancing at the mirror behind. Judging from the earlier situation, Olivia might endure some hardships, but likely there's no life-threatening danger, and all this compared to the safety of the Watcher's Palace is acceptable. Rest assured, once the 4 hours are over and your soul successfully ascends to the Watcher's Palace, I will immediately take people over to support her, as long as she can hold on. Seems like support is gone. Barely dodging Raven Masked Man's multiple assaults and being riddled with wounds, eroded by fine sand, the red-haired director still found no sign of reinforcements arriving. He couldn't help but close his eyes, sighing deeply within his heart. According to the Sagittarius director's swift and decisive nature, if reinforcements were truly coming, they would have arrived immediately without any unforeseen circumstances holding him back. Since he hasn't arrived after such a long time, it's evident that he's not planning on coming. As for why he would break the promise, if my guess is correct, Mr. Taurus has probably started his ascension, hasn't he? Momentarily commanding a small portion of scarlet hair, crushing Raven Masked Man's attack, a faint hint of sadness emerged in the red-haired director's eyes. Even though the ascension is a result recognized by all members of the Cleanup Bureau, including Mr. Taurus himself, to me, it means losing the last of my kin. Even though I've long prepared myself accordingly, there's still a pang of bitterness in my heart. Are my attacks really that effective? Scarlet Hair Lady is almost crying because of me? Staring at the red-haired director in front of him, with an expression of despondency and almost tearful eyes, Raven Masked Man was momentarily stunned, then couldn't help but be overjoyed. However, just as the newly inspired Raven Masked Man prepared to exert himself even further and kill the helpless Scarlet Hair Lady in one go, a figure suspended below suddenly lowered his head, bit onto the scarlet hair holding him, and forcefully pulled it from his chest. Astonished by the sudden emptiness from the heaviest strand of hair, the grieving red-haired director for the ascension of his parent was suddenly stunned, hurriedly urging other slaughter blood hairs to save the person. But Leon, who had detached from the scarlet hair, plunged straight into the abyss below as if carrying weights, fading out of sight in the blink of an eye. He did this to free up the Scarlet Hair Lady by committing suicide? Fool! Watching Leon free himself from the grip of slaughter blood hair and voluntarily plunge into the depths of the demonic soul abyss, Raven Masked Man couldn't help but sneer. The real reason behind Scarlet Hair Lady's situation now was the souls of those millions. Even without you, the heaviest burden, she can only return some souls to their bodies, still lacking the ability to fight back. You only died in vain. Leon! But what Raven Masked Man didn't expect was that Scarlet Hair Lady, who remained silent, suddenly screamed. Then she loosened her protection over herself once again. She bore having most of her soul drawn out, forcibly splitting a large amount of scarlet hair, reaching deeply into the demonic soul abyss, seemingly wanting to pull back the fool who just fell down. This great opportunity. Noticing this rare gap, Raven Masked Man's gaze narrowed. Then he pounced towards the soul-detached red-haired director, attempting to eliminate this major threat to the Slaughter King Association. Yet at this moment, a mist-like gray robe suddenly floated out from a nearby dream realm, draping over the anxious red-haired director's shoulders. Under Raven Masked Man's astonished gaze, the wounds he worked half a day to inflict on her suddenly turned into a cluster of nightmares, expelled from Scarlet Hair Lady's body, quietly floating between the two. To everyone's surprise, a familiar figure wearing Goggles' crown emerged from the newborn nightmare, extending a hand wrapped in gray mist, gripping his neck. King of Nightmares? Isn't it already? No. Wait. Seeing the fury that desired to kill him on sight in the eyes of the King of Nightmares, Raven Masked Man's body was suddenly shaken, an expression of terror emerging in his eyes. This isn't the King of Nightmares. It's the one who just fell. How's this possible? No time to ponder the cause of the anomaly. Sensing Leon's murderous intent, Raven Masked Man's body instantly dispersed, fleeing in all directions without hesitation. But now, with nightmares everywhere, Leon, who became the new King of Nightmares using the emblem, took merely one step forward, traversing countless nightmares instantly, simultaneously blocking multiple Raven Masked Men. You! Farewell. Amidst the horrified expressions of the Raven Masked Men, recreating the earlier scene as Leon simultaneously emerged from various dream realms, grabbed their necks, and decisively snapped them fiercely. Crack! Finished. Feeling tremendous strength pouring into his body as Leon moved, Raven Masked Man's heart sank instantly. But what surprised him was that overwhelming force merely circulated within his body and did nothing, directly retreating. Why didn't he just kill me? Surviving Raven Masked Man, dazed for a moment, suddenly realized. Even if Leon successfully crossed the difference between man and God, obtaining the power belonging to the King of Nightmares, his understanding of power remains at the human level, only knowing how to destroy the enemy's body and soul. But for a true God, compared to the body and soul, one's mastery over authority is the core. To truly kill a true God, one must eliminate the mark they left on their authority. Yet, this newly born Lord of Nightmares, though having mastered the corresponding authority, hasn't learned how to use it yet, much less the way to eliminate authority marks unique to a true God. Ahaha! You can't kill me! Understanding how he narrowly escaped, the rejoiced Raven Masked Man, unable to contain his smile, tilted his head and roared, then frantically struggled, attempting to flee Leon's grasp once more. But what Raven Masked Man couldn't foresee was that, after repeated attempts, even when he realized he couldn't completely kill him even by crushing him, frowning Leon hesitated for a moment, and then, with a look of disdain, opened his mouth. Ah! 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 Seeing Leon's head suddenly enlarge dozens of times, directly biting towards him, Raven Masked Man's eyes bulged to the point of bleeding. Shouldn't the attack method of the Lord of Nightmares forcibly drag others into nightmares and shatter their spirit and will, leading their soul to entirely fragment? And why the heck are you munching like that? No. Don't. No. Not tasty. Besides having no taste at all, it even pricked his mouth, akin to gnawing a window pane filled with sand, uncleaned for 800 years. Giving Raven Masked Man a hugely negative review regarding the taste, Leon then prepared to utilize the authority of the three-headed canine deity to thoroughly kill this traitor of the director. But right then, a peculiar mechanical adjusting sound abruptly emerged from Leon's stomach. Subsequently, a familiar golden watch time mark flickered and vanished repeatedly. Raven Masked Man, on the verge of falling into Leon's stomach, screamed, desperately vanished, then reappeared bewildered on a bench by the wharf. This fast? Noticing one fewer mark from his arrangement, Aquarius Director, ascending the 6th floor of the Virgin Branch, couldn't help but tense slightly, then pushed aside drooping layers of scarlet hair, revealing the enormous door blocked behind. Marks he left could only temporarily borrow the opponent's time, with strict limitations, needing to return while they're alive. While not activated by him, itself triggered on Raven's mark, it must be that he's about to be killed. So the mark deduced it's his last stage to return borrowed time from him. This precaution he left back then unintentionally granted him life. Since Raven has been defeated, I must speed up my own process here. After closing his eyes slightly and preparing mentally, Aquarius Director lifted his arm, pressing his left hand into the hand-shaped depression on the door, and then raised a golden knife with his right hand, slashing at his left wrist fiercely. Blood flowed profusely. The Aquarius Director, who had willingly severed their own left hand, took a pale step back, yet their hand remained perfectly fitted into the groove on the giant doorway. Indeed, even though the Star Palace was sealed, my authority could not be completely replaced until a new director appeared. After glancing at his left hand wedged into the door, Aquarius Director's eyes revealed a hint of relief. Without urgent care for the wound, he softly chanted, "Aquarius, flood, beautiful lad, wine servant, eagle, search for knowledge, golden grapevine." The cryptic phrases were uttered one by one, and on the dark-hued colossal doorway, intricate patterns corresponding to the words emerged in sequence. The hand trapped in the door sank deeper, and a third of the black door slowly illuminated, radiating a sun-like golden glow. 2 more times. Gazing nostalgically at the golden vase motif on the door, the Aquarius Director retrieved another brand-new left hand, attaching it to his bloodied wrist before pressing it against the great door once again. Sagittarius, Eternal Night, Undying One, Mentor, Poison Arrow, sacrifice, centaur longbow. With the chanting of the second set of secret phrases, the corresponding golden patterns appeared once more, lighting up an additional third of the doorway, giving the previously lifeless door a sudden vivacity, even faintly yearning for the arrival of the final hand. Pisces, love and desire, reflection in water, mother and child, rope, jealousy, golden belt. The third, slightly older left hand was welcomed by the door during the incantation, illuminating the final third of the doorway, which flickered like the sun for a brief moment, ultimately vanishing completely. After the enormous door disappeared, what appeared before the Aquarius director was a vast room, half-lit by a golden lamp overhead, teeming with dense swarms of black ants. Approximately billions of small four-legged ants moved in and out of 11 sprawling ant nests according to an exceedingly odd rule. Those under the light were more active, while those in the shade remained quiet. Within one shaded nest, a golden ant missing its left front leg suddenly raised its head to gaze at the Aquarius director standing at the entrance, gently waving its antennae. "Is this ant me?" Exchanging a look with the golden ant that raised its head, the Aquarius director picked up the left hand that had fallen, reattaching it to his wrist, and astonishingly, the golden four-legged ant also regrew its left hand, then slightly nodded to him. "A nation is like a nest, people are like ants. Though this is merely abnormal object number 004, in terms of danger, it is likely greater than the Watcher's Palace." With a slight shake of his head, the Aquarius director hesitated to enter the room, instead standing at the doorway, gesturing for the golden ant representing him to approach, then gazed up at a higher place. A similarly golden petite female ant struggled to climb an invisible stairway, laboriously moving its two hind legs upward, while below, another ant raised its head to gaze at the starry sky, seemingly anticipating something. The ascension has already started. It is likely Andrew's plan. He indeed enjoys such underhanded schemes. Squinting reflexively at the ant gazing at the starry sky, the Aquarius director snorted, then forcefully exhaled towards him from afar. The golden ant staring at the starry sky, seeming to sense something, suddenly burst forth with golden brilliance, attempting to resist the unknown source of danger. Yet, even as it was no ordinary ant, it was still an ant, resisting for barely a few seconds before being blown away by the Aquarius director's breath, vanishing somewhere unknown. However, even with just a single breath, the Aquarius director at the doorway nearly collapsed to his knees, his already pale face turning even whiter than paper. The consumption is truly matching against Sagittarius might feel like this. It seems the correct use of the 11-ant nest, rather than directly harming the target, is to leverage the symbolic meaning of these ants, combined with other normally ineffective abnormal objects. After gasping for breath while supporting himself against the door frame, the Aquarius director finally regained some composure, then bent down to pick up his own golden ant before pulling out a golden knife, raising his hand towards the golden bull director who was ascending the palace. But then, woof! Accompanied by a childish bark, a familiar mirror crown unexpectedly sprang from the side of the golden knife, not only blocking the blade just in time but also shimmering briefly before the Aquarius director's eyes. Following this, the ant-filled empty room vanished, replaced by a void-dark world magnified countless times, with absolute darkness surrounding in all directions, except for the black river below where nightmares flowed, emitting dribs and drabs of ominous light. This is a good dream. Using the mirror dog to launch a sneak attack, successfully dragging the Aquarius director into the dream, Leon, shrouded in gray mist, stepped into the nightmare created by the crown, standing still before the astonished Aquarius director. But for you, it might not be. Has he completely become one with the king of nightmares? Watching Leon stand firm in the endless darkness with feet on the nightmare river, the Aquarius director mused briefly, then smiled and spoke. So you've chosen to abandon your humanity, willingly embracing nightmares. No wonder Dongya lost so quickly. But is this truly good? After becoming the master of nightmares, you'll also be banished by the Watcher's Palace, making it difficult to return to this world. There's no need for you to worry about this. Without explanation to Aquarius, knowing that this transformation was temporary, Leon triggered the enchantment buff from the demonic soul abyss with a sinister tone. Aquarius, Cleanup Bureau's support is arriving soon. Your plan has completely failed. Mr. Leon. Lying is not a good habit. Hearing this, the Aquarius director chuckled, raised his hand, and with casual force, shattered the immature nightmare before returning to the 6th floor of the Virgin Branch. Without waiting for Leon to act, he directly activated the temporal rift, accelerating his actions countless times, slicing towards the ascending golden ant. In the astonished gaze of the Aquarius director, after he slashed it once, the ant representing the director of Taurus did not show the familiar marks of the golden pocket watch, but instead flickered slightly and then shattered instantly. Soon after, the room containing the 11 ant nests shattered along with that golden ant, only to be replaced by another identical room. The same dimly lit room, the same gigantic 11 ant nests, the same golden ant climbing the palace. Everything was exactly the same as before. The only difference was that in the dark corner of the room, there was now a young man in a gray robe staring at him, smiling coldly with a wicked and arrogant expression. Aquarius, support from the Cleanup Bureau will arrive soon. Your plan has completely failed. Even this Leon is fake. After slashing the sinister-faced Leon and successfully falling into a lower layer of the dream realm, then watching a new Leon emerge from the darkness with a wicked smile, the Aquarius director couldn't help but close his eyes, feeling a throbbing pain in his temples. How very awake. This kid, even though he just became a true god and his strength surged, didn't even harbor a thought of relying on power, but instead came with the intention of stalling for time from the start. If he guessed right, Leon should be outside this layer of nightmare, constantly laying down layer upon layer of dream realms, possibly having set up hundreds of layers, which is precisely what he feared most. Even if Leon, borrowing remnants of the King of Nightmares, broke through the barrier between humans and gods in one fell swoop, gaining power similar to his own, or even stronger by a margin, in a true god-level contest, the strength of power isn't as important. If Leon had really become arrogant and wanted to compete with him, even if he wouldn't be easily killed, he would soon find a flaw, break free from the dream realm, and accomplish his goal of replacing Taurus. But now Leon wasn't even engaging him directly, instead jumping straight into an endurance battle, making it somewhat uncomfortable. Dragging the demonic soul abyss over previously had already consumed considerable effort, and after breaking the seal of the three-headed copper gate, he also expended a lot, plus he had a direct clash with an ant representing Sagittarius, so his current state was abysmal. What's more, even this sparse remaining power couldn't be fully used to duel Leon. If he exhausted too much strength on Leon, he might not even be able to perform the ritual to push Taurus aside, let alone walk up the over 10,000 steps to ascend to the palace. Leon, let's talk. After assessing his current state, the Aquarius director decisively gave up on continuing to battle Leon, instead retracting the golden knife and addressing Leon in the corner. I admit, you can indeed keep me trapped until the Cleanup Bureau's support arrives. But if you continue to trap me, you might regret it for the rest of your life. ? In Leon's wary expression, the Aquarius director slowly opened his right hand, revealing 3 ants, 1 large and 2 small, then calmly spoke. Let's make a deal. You let me go, and I'll give these 3 back to you. How about that? You? Upon noticing the 3 small ants in the Aquarius director's hand, Leon's pupils contracted suddenly, and then his entire soul tensed out of his control. Since they could be brought out by the Aquarius director to threaten him, the identity of these 3 ants was naturally beyond doubt, but I don't believe it. After a slight pause, Leon continued stacking nightmares while coldly saying, Aquarius, I don't think you could have foreseen the current situation. These 3 ants can't possibly be them. You're definitely bluffing me. No, I didn't foresee the current situation, but I know what to do to ascend to the Watcher's palace. With a smile, the Aquarius director then asked, Leon, do you know the prayer wheel? Prayer wheel? Upon hearing the Aquarius director's words, Leon recalled that the director seemed to have requested the director of Taurus to temporarily unseal that item for him to use once, but was ultimately rejected. Are you talking about number 005? The one listed after the 12 ant nests? Yes, that one. Nodding slightly, the Aquarius director said in a calm tone. Since you know about it, that's easy to explain. The prayer wheel is an indisputable omnipotent wishing device. Every cleaner who successfully ascends to the director position has the right to use the prayer wheel once to fulfill their wish, and the wish I made initially was to successfully ascend to the Watcher's Palace. What? Upon hearing this, Leon couldn't help but feel slightly shocked. Based on what he knew from the director, the results of the prayer wheel were almost absolute. As long as its given conditions were met one by one, one's wish could nearly be guaranteed to be fulfilled. If Aquarius had indeed used that item and wished to ascend the palace, his replacing Mr. Taurus and ascending to the palace was practically unstoppable. A set of abnormal objects for replacing the target's existence. A pair of complex souls divided into good and evil that never meet, an ultimate and thorough death, and a clean rebirth shedding all past. Raising his recently received left hand, palm facing Leon, he pressed down 4 fingers in succession and said indifferently, "These 4 are the preconditions given by the prayer wheel that could allow me to ascend the Watcher's Palace, and I've already done them all, and as for the specific method, it's considered a success now." At this point, under Leon's frowning observation, the Aquarius director turned his left hand to face himself, continuing to bend his fingers as he counted. Summon the black tide in the deepest of night, attach weights to the obstructing scarlet hair, acquire 3 out of 12 palms and whispers, find a man outside of fate, propose a deal he cannot refuse. With each finger, the Aquarius director bent down. Leon's expression darkened a shade, and when the last pinky curled into his palm, Leon remained silent for a few seconds in the shadows before actively dismantling the layered dream realms he had set up, returning the Aquarius director to reality. "Thank you." Pulling out a small golden knife, he lightly slashed at the golden ant climbing the palace, then casually tossed the 3 small ants back into the room, while slightly raising the corner of his mouth to reveal a winner's smile and said to the expressionless Leon with a playful tone, "Sorry. These 3 ants weren't actually your family, just ones I casually caught earlier. But I wasn't exactly lying. After all, you didn't dare gamble on whether what I said was true or not, right? Farewell." With a slight twitch of Leon's cheek, the Aquarius director smiled and waved goodbye with a pleased demeanor. "Although you caused me quite a bit of trouble, you also helped me quite a lot, so, did you or did you not use the prayer wheel?" "Did I use the prayer wheel? Why do you care?" Facing Leon's inquiry, the Aquarius director was slightly taken aback, then nodded as he replied, "Yes, I did. He used that item." Receiving the affirmative reply, Leon hesitated for a moment, then dismantled the ultimate layer of the dream realm he had crafted with full effort, returning the Aquarius director to the true reality as he said, "Please." In the Aquarius director's suddenly widened eyes, Leon raised his right arm and made a gesture inviting the golden ant climbing the palace. "Rest assured, this time it's real. I no longer intend to stop you." "Really not gonna stop me anymore?" Taking out the dream-breaking cone, holding it in the palm, and squeezing it hard, I noticed that the world before me didn't change. It seemed Leon hadn't left any backup plans, and the Aquarius director couldn't help but furrow his brow. A troublesome opponent that's hard to handle can indeed be a headache, but when such an opponent suddenly gives up while there's still a chance, it leaves a significant sense of uncertainty. "Why?" Seeing Leon indeed stepping aside, the smile on the Aquarius director's face completely disappeared. Hesitating for a moment, he couldn't help but ask, "Are you?" "I do know some things about the prayer wheel." After recalling some intelligence about the prayer wheel, Leon began to explain. "According to my understanding of that thing, while the prayer wheel is an all-purpose wishing machine that almost always fulfills the user's desires, the final outcome it offers may not necessarily be what you truly want. Wishes fulfilled through it often bring bigger troubles and deeper pain, and the larger the wish, the harder the price required will be to bear. The prayer wheel has a problem?" After hearing Leon's words, the Aquarius director couldn't help but squint slightly, then asked back, "Did Taurus let you come into contact with the prayer wheel?" Is this something you figured out yourself? No. Leon shook his head. It's something I figured out through the description from Mr. Torres and the director. Aside from purely guessing, there were also resistance hints from the badge. According to the rule that the deeper the understanding of materialism, the stronger the resistance. Since I received a hint that my resistance to the prayer wheel increased, it proves my guess is correct. This thing indeed has a bit of sinister nature. Guessing? Not knowing that Leon had other bases for judgment, after hearing Leon's words, the Aquarius director remained silent for a moment, then slowly shook his head and said, "If you had touched the prayer wheel and used your own ability to examine the results, I would take it more seriously. But what you're saying now is just some baseless speculation, not enough for me to abandon my plan. I've already said, I won't try to stop you again." Hearing this, Leon smiled slightly, then maliciously asked back, "If I wanted to deceive you into abandoning your plan, why would I tell you that I haven't actually come into contact with the prayer wheel, and it's all just my guess? I told you the prayer wheel has problems simply because I wanted a little revenge on you. Now I'm giving you a chance to reconsider, but if you actively give it up, then when you find out you've been fooled by the prayer wheel and my judgment turns out to be correct, the degree of pain in your heart at that time will be exponentially multiplied. Moreover, my guess isn't entirely without basis." Seeing the Aquarius director fall into silence again, Leon, seemingly in high spirits, explained with a smile, "From my observation of anomalous objects, most of them follow one rule. The stronger the effect, the greater the price. Yet the effects of the prayer wheel, compared to the price necessary to use it, are indeed too insignificant. This also confirms my guess. The real price of using the prayer wheel is achieving a result fundamentally opposite to the wish you have in mind." "I don't believe it." After a moment of silence, the Aquarius director voiced his skepticism. "Activating the prayer wheel requires a substantial price. I've made countless preparations and sacrifices to meet the conditions for this opportunity today. You said it yourself, these are merely conditions." Interrupting the Aquarius director's skepticism, Leon smiled and said, "Everything you did was what the prayer wheel told you was necessary to fulfill your wishes, but the price for it telling you this information you haven't really paid yet. My judgment still holds." "All right, I've said enough. Please go ahead." While the Aquarius director was about to ask more, Leon had already once again raised his hand, gestured toward the struggling golden ant climbing the palace, and with a cordial smile said, "Just like how you used fake ants to threaten me earlier because the item on the scale was too important, whether what you held was a real ant or not, I could only choose to let you out. And now it's your turn. No matter what information I know or whether your plan has issues or not, having almost given it your all, you can only push forward with gritted teeth. Even if you understand in your heart, there's a 99% chance that what I'm saying is true, but you absolutely won't willingly end it just like this. So please go ahead. Do what you want to do. I won't stop you." Facing Leon's repeated urging, the Aquarius director's arm trembled slightly. Then under Leon's smiling gaze, he once again raised his arm and made a slicing gesture in the direction of the golden ant above. Click! The imprint of the pocket watch shrunk countless times, flickered upon the ant representing the director of Taurus for a moment, then swiftly returned to its place. With the familiar sound of gears turning, the form of the Aquarius director retraced and disappeared. Meanwhile, above the 11-ant nest, a tiny golden ant suddenly appeared behind the one struggling to climb, raising its arm to rest on the spine of the former. It really crossed over in an instant. That knife is truly not ordinary. After casting an envious glance at the ant representing the Aquarius director, Leon's smile faded slightly. Then he retrieved the unfair snake pact and a carbon pen from the mirror world. About the prayer wheel, I hadn't lied. It definitely has some issues, but absolutely letting the Aquarius do as he pleases was never an option. In the spirit of not missing an opportunity, with the intention to thoroughly eliminate evil, Leon picked up his homemade carbon pen and wrote down the name of an anomalous object on the snakeskin scroll. Duplicating duo. According to the Aquarius director's account, One of the prerequisite conditions for someone ascending the palace was possessing a full set of anomalous objects used to replace the existence of the target. If I remember correctly, to completely replace the Director of Taurus, a total of 6 anomalous objects were needed to replace the past and future, soul and body, personality and emotion of the director. The one representing past was Anna's old photograph. This crucial anomalous object on the surface was stolen by Nicole infiltrating the Virgin Branch, ending up in the Aquarius's hands. But in reality, what was stolen was a counterfeit replicated by the director. The genuine item has always been in my possession. So next, as long as I exchange back that counterfeit so that one of the 6 anomalous objects needed to replace the Director of Taurus is missing, then his plan is practically, why can't it be exchanged? As expected, the item that Nicole stole had been tampered with by the Scarlet Hair Lady. Gazing at the old photograph, pinned down by the resident's nails yet still shaking violently, the Aquarius director shook his head and then willingly pulled out the thumbtack, releasing this crucial abnormal object. But it's no big deal, this could even be considered good news. Looking at the marble foot that had replaced the old photograph meant to alter the target's past, which appeared in his hand, the Aquarius director couldn't help but chuckle, then tossed away the heavy foot of fitness and took out a delicate purple copper jar. Even though the photograph had been tampered with and taken back at a crucial moment, its effect had not diminished. However, to ensure everything went smoothly, I had already utilized the power of that photograph once and sealed the resulting effect within the salt copper vault. This way, even if the photograph were forcibly taken away, I can still use its power again by opening the bottle of the salt copper vault, making up 6 items used to replace Taurus abnormal objects. And Leon, who outwardly let me leave but secretly tampered with things to try to remove that photograph. Clearly, he has no certainty either. The guidance given by the prayer may not necessarily lead me to a bad end. Sorry, Joan. After apologizing under Director of Taurus's angry and desperate gaze, the Aquarius director sat her, immobilized on the invisible steps, then opened the small copper jar in his hand, found a lump of creamy yellow rock salt, and licked it. So salty. After spitting a couple of times unable to resist, the Aquarius director reached out, gently stroked Director of Taurus's forehead, and then warmly spoke. Your past is also my once upon a time. As the Aquarius director recited, a coral-like fungi with red filaments quietly ripped open from his fingers, growing from Director of Taurus's forehead. After securing the copper jar, the Aquarius director took out from his left eye socket a glass eyeball and shook it in front of Director of Taurus's pupils. My future is also what you see. As his words landed, a second bright red fungus sprouted, gently swaying under the splendid starry sky. Your thoughts resonate with mine. Your nature is as one with mine. Your soul, a reversed reflection of me in the mirror. My body, your inseparable kin. United twofold heart ties, a laughing yet crying human head sculpture. A strange double-layered dressing mirror with both front and back, half-withered and half-alive bizarre embryo. In the hastening peculiar chanting, the Aquarius director took out the remaining 4 abnormal objects, used them one after another, and then raised his hand to pluck the fungi grown from Director of Taurus's forehead, consuming them one by one. Once all 6 bright red fungi were thoroughly chewed and swallowed, the Aquarius director, clad in a water-blue robe, vanished on the stairs leading to the Watcher's Palace, replaced by 2 identical old women with kindly appearances, completely indistinguishable from one another. The only way to differentiate the 2 was their vastly differing expressions. Director of Taurus, sitting on the stairs, wore an expression full of resentment and agony, whereas the Director of Taurus, standing on the stairs, wore an indescribably boundless joy. Go back, Joan. Calling Director of Taurus by name, the Aquarius director pulled out 2 sharp beast bones from her back, casually throwing them down the stairs, then smilingly pointed towards the path they had taken. Your path is over there, and as for this path, it should be walked by me for you. Looking at the now identical reflection of herself, the Director of Taurus couldn't help but close her eyes, then with a strained voice asked, although it's too late, I still want to ask, do you truly think this is worth it? It is. Without hesitation, Came the answer from the Aquarius director with a smile, who then counter-asked, Joan, do you still remember the passphrase to open the three-headed copper gate? Yes. Director of Taurus fell silent for a moment, then said, Taurus, journey afar from home, humanitarian, avatar, bull. All right, there's no need to tell me everything, just as long as you remember it. Interrupting director of Taurus's words, the Aquarius director calmly explained, this set of secret language handed down through the generations, besides opening the copper gate to invoke dangerous abnormal objects, actually also indicates some traits needed to become the corresponding board member and inherit the secret technique. For your Taurus palace, it's loyalty and integrity. For the Sagittarius palace, it's the courage to sacrifice. For the Pisces palace, it's not being willing to be beneath others. And for my Aquarius palace, it's the exploration and thirst for knowledge. Of course, these aren't necessarily positive traits. Like in the case of Andrew, there are indeed quite significant problems. The Aquarius director smiled slightly as he spoke, and then continued. The Sagittarius palace favors those who dare to sacrifice, but Andrew, besides being willing to sacrifice himself, also doesn't hesitate to sacrifice others. For his goals, he's accustomed to resorting to any means, which is why his secret technique is never properly learned, always carrying an air of deceitfulness. And what about you? The director of Taurus couldn't help but question upon hearing this. Instead of mocking Andrew, perhaps you should first reflect on what you've been doing all these years. As for me, I indeed have problems too, even more severe than his. Upon hearing the director of Taurus's question, the Aquarius director sighed, his eyes showing a trace of desolation, as he said, my thirst for knowledge is far too intense, and after assuming the position of the Aquarius director, the Aquarius palace has been continuously enhancing my thirst for knowledge. It's like a never-extinguishing demonic fire, constantly scorching my heart. Joan, I'm well aware of my problem. An overly fervent thirst for knowledge is overwhelming my humanity, and after struggling against it for so long, the human part of me is almost dried up. If I hadn't just borrowed some from you, I wouldn't even be talking to you about these matters, but would rather leave you here to die and press on without looking back. All right, I'm not telling you this to justify myself, but just to remind you. Seeing the Taurus director slightly open his mouth, somewhat at a loss, the Aquarius director shook his head and said, though the Star Palace is one of the cleanup bureau's biggest trump cards, at the end of the day it's also an abnormal object, which can gradually stain the user's soul and even invisibly change our thoughts. Those decisions you've made in the past may not have truly been from your own will. As for the Watcher's Palace, I'll watch over it for you, at least until the things I've borrowed from you are completely consumed. You can leave now. Looking at the gentle and kind face in front of him, almost perfectly replicating everything about himself, even the personality, the Taurus director's mouth moved slightly, then heaved a long sigh of desolation. I hope you do as you say. I can't guarantee it, but it should be fine. By the way, speaking of problems, the Watcher's Palace has been showing some anomalies lately. Upon hearing the Aquarius's answer, the Taurus director suddenly remembered something and advised. Recently, the messages from the Watcher's Palace have all been missing crucial parts. Andrew suspects that the previous keeper was washed away by time, erasing all but his final instincts, and since it hasn't been maintained, it's caused some malfunctions in the Watcher's Palace. As the new keeper, remember to make the necessary adjustments. Understood. After a response, the satisfied Aquarius nodded with a gentle smile, then turned to continue upward, stepping towards the dream he had pursued all his life, in the complex gaze of the Taurus director. After over 3 hours of climbing, step by step into the depths of the starry sky, that magnificent palace hidden amongst the countless stars, both real and illusory, finally revealed itself in the Aquarius director's extremely excited gaze. This supreme masterpiece of the creation mystique, fostered by the will of all humankind and the greatest construct in human history, brought the Aquarius director's heart into a wild sway just from its blurred outline. This grand palace, situated at the confluence of star rivers, simultaneously exists in both the past and the future, stretching back endless miles, capable of viewing all of history at a glance, while its branches and tendrils entwine forward, leading to countless disparate and interwoven futures. And on the ancient colonnades flanking the palace, which seem endless, was engraved a plethora of mysterious runes teeming with enigmatic energy, seemingly inscribed with the boundless truths of the world. It's this. About to realize the dream pursued throughout his life, the extremely excited Aquarius director staggered through the last few steps of the staircase, lunging towards the palace in front of him with utmost happiness, embracing a thick pillar and planting a firm kiss on it. After slightly venting some of his tears of excitement, the Aquarius director, overwhelmed, wiped his teary eyes with the back of his hand, gazing fervently at the mysterious runes carved onto the colonnades. Leon. Leon? 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 The moon sinks and the stars fade. Night ends and daybreak arrives. After an unbelievably chaotic night, the sun rises as usual the next day, and the nightmare river that permeates the royal capital gradually recedes under the slightly drowsy sunlight. With the demonic soul abyss realigned, millions of souls that had been suspended all night finally break free from the nightmare and successfully return to their original bodies, dragged by blood-red hair. It's finally over. Using the black goat's soul vision to confirm that everyone's souls have returned, Leon lets out a long sigh, then sinks back into the sofa and tiredly closes his eyes. Even though the nightmare is the deepest fear in the night, it allows him to have boundless energy at night, but it only keeps his body from being tired. It has no solution for mental exhaustion. And last night, to put it plainly, it was extraordinarily exhausting mentally. Even putting aside the damned Aquarius director, just the situation at headquarters left him uneasy. It was supposed to be an ambush, but until now, there's been no movement, and none of the three directors can be reached. To guard against potential follow-up moves by the Slaughter King Association, he had to stay alert next to the director, guarding against possible second attacks while helping her alleviate the pressure of soul dragging, anxiously enduring a whole night. Luckily, the Slaughter King Association didn't send additional personnel, and the second half of the night was peaceful, allowing him and the director to safely wait for the sun, narrowly escaping any deadly mishaps. Leon, just as Leon, whose body isn't tired but mentally exhausted, reclines on the sofa to relax, a foot suddenly stretches over from the side, weakly nudging him. Do me a favor. The soul finally returned to the body of the red-haired director, who sprawled ungracefully on the adjacent sofa, looking exhausted and pleading. I want to have a drink now. Do you have any alcohol? Could you give me a few bottles? I do have alcohol, but it's from that batch Mr. Torres sent before. It's alcohol to me, but it won't be to you. Then could you go downstairs and fetch me a couple of bottles from the storeroom, would you? Honestly, although you're really worn out, I truly don't want to move. Having been tense all night and then helping the red-haired director with a large amount of soul work, Leon's spirit simply couldn't bear it anymore. Usually diligent, he seldom showed this laziness and turned his head away, pretending not to hear her request. Leon. Good Leon. Seeing Leon unresponsive, the red-haired director, as limp as if boneless, moved closer with difficulty, then stretched her foot to nudge him again. I'm begging you, could you please bring me 2 bottles of alcohol? I really don't want to move. I don't want to move either. Can't you use your hair to get 2 bottles yourself? Moving my hairs astiring as moving my legs. I was up all night with you, completely drained, and I really have no strength left. What do you mean by being up all night with me? Can you stop saying things that can be easily misunderstood? And could you stop kicking my pants? Anna just washed them for me yesterday. Kicking. Please help. Please help. No help. Kicking. Leon, exhausted as if his soul were dying, tried hard to move away. Then, with his eyes closed, irritably said, Go yourself. With the effort of trying to get me to do it, you could have already brought up the alcohol. It's not the same. How is it not the same? It's just not the same. Then tell me how it's different. Seeing that Leon wouldn't be ordered, the red-haired director seemed to sulk and stop talking, simply persistently stretching her foot, lightly nudging Leon's thigh, hoping to annoy him enough that he'd get the alcohol willingly. After she kicked him several times, Leon was indeed annoyed enough to be at wit's end. So he caught her ankle and irritably said, "Stop it. Let me rest a bit, and then I'll—" "Where's your shoe?" "It fell off earlier." Tucked inside sheer white socks, the 5 toes flexibly moved up and down a few times before the red-haired director, with her eyes closed, said with a playful smile, "How about this? If you get me the alcohol, I can let you—" "Stop. Enough." Based on his familiarity with the red-haired director, Leon quickly interrupted before she could speak without restraint, then reluctantly pushed away her warm foot, laboriously got up, went downstairs, grabbed 2 bottles from the storage, and threw them to her before lying back on the sofa with his eyes closed. Unfortunately, he hadn't rested long before her foot crept back again, playfully pinching his outer thigh with her toes. Leon. What now? Will you have a drink with me?" "Having a drink? Well, that sounds acceptable." After taking the bottle the red-haired director tossed back, Leon popped the cork with his thumb and took a swig, then asked with his eyes closed, "Director, is there any news from headquarters yet?" Hiss. "Ah." After gulping a large mouthful of brandy, the red-haired director, refraining from alcohol for days, let out an immensely satisfying sigh before nodding. "There's some news, I guess. I just inquired with Edward. He said now Mimi controls Pisces director's body, and she wakes up at 9 every day, whereas Sagittarius director has vanished, can't contact anyone, and as for Mr. Taurus—" She paused slightly at this point, then said with a complex expression, "Since the palace entry was forcibly interrupted, it's hard to determine her current situation, but judging from the 11th ant nest, seems like she's not in any danger." "Then that's good news." Taking a sip of rum sweetened with molasses, Leon said with his eyes closed. Though Aquarius succeeded this time, his palace entry means he's trapped alone in that prison. Slowly worn down by time until nothing remains, we might as well consider him already dead. Out went a troublesome guy, but swapping him for Mr. Taurus saved her from facing 1,000 years of solitude. No matter how you look at it, we came out ahead. Ha ha! Indeed. Upon hearing Leon's words, the red-haired director couldn't help but laugh, clinking her bottle against Leon's and saying with some emotion, though it might not be a good sentiment, when finding out Aquarius successfully replaced Mr. Taurus as the palace guard, "I was actually happy, even somewhat thankful towards him." Enough about that, Leon. Could you come over here for a minute and help me check my teeth? "Huh. You know, last night was really extreme." Facing Leon's shocked expression, the red-haired director took a swig of alcohol and explained with a helpless look, "In the 32 guards there are a few responsible for guarding souls, and my soul was forcibly pulled out of my body, so those teeth and my soul were constantly in conflict. They might have received some damage and stirred a bit. Although it sounds a bit outrageous, it seems reasonably plausible." Having rested a bit and being somewhat curious about the red-haired director's situation, Leon leaned over and asked, "But I'm not good at repairing abnormal objects. How can I help you check your teeth?" "You don't need to repair. Just reach out and feel them." The red-haired director lay lazily on the sofa, looking tired. "Fortunately, Mr. Taurus has returned safely. You help me check in advance which of the 32 guards have been damaged. It'll be easier when I ask her to fix my teeth later." "All right then." After listening to the red-haired director, Leon nodded slightly and then moved closer to her sofa. "Get closer. You come over." Stretching lazily on the sofa, the red-haired director said with her eyes closed, "Come on, Leon. I really don't want to move. How about I treat you to a drink someday if you help me check my teeth?" "You really are." "Fine. If it weren't for you pulling through last night, forcefully holding on to millions of souls, there'd truly be big trouble. Given your great contribution, go ahead. Take it easy if you want." Shaking his head helplessly, Leon put down the bottle, got up, and moved to face the red-haired director, then urged, "I'm here. Sit up stably and open your mouth. Why don't you lean over? Ah. You're hopelessly lazy." Unable to resist sighing inwardly, faced with the stubbornly immobile red-haired director, Leon turned his back to the conference room door, supported the sofa's backrest, and leaned over toward her open mouth. And due to the red-haired director's excessively lazy, relaxed posture, Leon had to lean over her legs to barely crouch down, appearing as if he was completely leaning over her. Wait, at times like this, noticing their current posture seemed somewhat off, Leon suddenly remembered something and quickly turned to look at the door behind him. As expected, a familiar figure stood at the door, blushing deeply, wishing she could disappear, while peeking through her fingers. "I knew it." With an extremely speechless expression, Leon watched as Miss Schwankpa, punctual at crucial moments, suddenly screamed, covered her face, and ran away, only to be dragged back into the second-floor meeting room by a lock of vibrant red hair. Happy times are always short-lived. Huh. Sighing inwardly, the red-haired director tilted her fair neck and drank the brandy in her hand in one go, then smiled at Layla, whose face was flushed. "Since you're awake, the others should be as well, right?" Yes." Appearing at the perfect time at the perfect place, after successfully breaking into the director and subordinate's scandalous scene, the unfortunate Miss Schwankpa couldn't help gripping her skirt tightly, nervously promising, "Director, my lips are sealed. I promise I won't tell anyone about what just happened." "You can't be serious. Knowing you, nothing you break into ever stays secret. Don't worry. You can talk about it if you wish." Looking at the fear-stricken Miss Schwankpa, the red-haired director chuckled and said, "We weren't doing anything indecent, just getting Leon to check my teeth. There's nothing to hide from others." "Checking teeth? Oh, right. Checking teeth." Possibly fearing losing her job, Miss Schwankpa's lacking emotional intelligence suddenly spiked, prompting her to nod repeatedly. "Yes, they were just checking teeth. I only saw them checking teeth, nothing else." "Forget it. The more we explain, the more complicated it gets." Shaking his head helplessly once again, the red-haired director switched the subject and gently asked, "Layla, did you have something you wanted to discuss?" "Ah, yes, something." Layla suddenly remembered after hearing the red-haired director's question, and quickly chimed in, "Director, the mirror in your office rang. A man with thick eyebrows and wearing a very decent expression was speaking to me through it, asking me to inform you to attend a meeting at the headquarters. A man with thick eyebrows and very decent-looking must be Director Sagittarius." Instinctively exchanging glances with Leon, the red-haired director narrowed her eyes slightly, then grabbed Leon's half-bottle still remaining and finished it in one gulp, before speaking coldly. "Having a meeting is great. I actually have things I'd like to discuss with him. Everyone, the reason I've gathered you here today is to inform you of something extremely important." With the previously closed headquarters now reopened and the venue formerly intended for the year-end review once again bustling, the wounded Director Sagittarius addressed everyone with a solemn expression. "I'm very sorry to inform everyone that regarding Mr. Taurus's ascension, it has been completely thwarted." "What? Did he truly make it after all?" "Oh no. This could be a huge problem now." Faced with Director Sagittarius's announcement, over 80 deputy directors suddenly stirred. Flurries of encrypted soul signals flew wildly, eagerly exchanging their respective intelligence. But despite his obvious low spirits, Director Sagittarius didn't halt the deputy director's private exchanges, instead remaining in the center of the venue, letting the surging soul signals echo around. "Mr. Sagittarius." Once a phase of intelligence exchange ended and they understood the event minimally, a petite deputy director's projection stood from their seat, displaying a sour expression before speaking. "Mr. Taurus met trouble during his ascension, right? Yet the ascension time you notified us of was set for 8 days later. So you independently arranged for Mr. Taurus's preemptive ascension, resulting in this failure. Can you explain this to us?" Confronted by the deputy director's inquiry, Director Sagittarius fell silent. After a while, he sighed slightly and then shook his head. 9/10 of the fault lies with me. I'm willing to take full responsibility. However, there's another matter needing our joint attention, far more critical than my mistake, more important than a failed ascension. Though the recent error was significant, Director Sagittarius maintains considerable authority, and seeing his sincerely grave expression, the deputy directors put their questions aside momentarily, waiting for his explanation. Before his ascension, Aquarius pledged to temporarily shoulder the responsibilities of the ascendant, continuing to relay crisis warnings about our future. Under the deputy director's surprised looks, Director Sagittarius unfolded a note while continuing. This is the first message sent by him, although the content is, "You might want to read it yourselves." What did Aquarius write? Enticed by Director Sagittarius's words, and noticing his deeply troubled look, the deputy directors narrowed their eyes inquisitively, focusing on the note in his hand. And on this newly minted yet visibly aged note, seemingly witnessing countless ages but appearing freshly cut, the majority was vague, with only the center containing the briefest of writing messily scrawled short words. Shit! Upon seeing the contents left by the Aquarius director on the paper note, the more than 80 deputy directors present fell into a collective silence. Although the note was extremely brief, the message conveyed was not flimsy. Especially with the intense ink strokes that pierced through the paper, it clearly revealed the writer's breached emotional defenses. However, there was something puzzling. Hadn't the Aquarius director already achieved his wish, successfully replacing Mr. Taurus and ascending to the Watcher's Palace? Why would he still write a note to curse someone? In any case, the situation is as you see it. After keeping the note filled with Aquarius's wrath, the Sagittarius director on the square spoke with a furrowed brow. It seems Aquarius is not prepared to keep his promise, to continue forewarning us of potential crises. Therefore, we must mentally prepare that before the next person ascends the palace, we might lose part of the protection from the Watcher's Palace. Indeed, after listening to the Sagittarius director's words, the deputy director's expressions also became solemn. Apart from preventing true God from descending arbitrarily, the most important function of the Watcher's Palace is to provide early warnings before a major crisis occurs. If the Aquarius, the ascendant, is unwilling to cooperate, then this vital function is deemed nullified. And the Cleanup Bureau has quite a vast spread. It has been able to safely overcome crises again and again, thanks in no small part to the forewarnings of the Watcher's Palace. Currently, with the Slaughter King Association lurking, if this early warning is truly lost, the work in the future will inevitably become strained. What this situation signifies, I don't need to say. You should all be aware. After raising his head and looking around at the expressions of the deputy directors, the Sagittarius director sighed and said, "So, to deal with the potential forthcoming situations, I discussed with the director of Taurus. We agreed that it's necessary to prepare for the worst-case scenario. Best to forcibly bring back the director on the old soil. What do you think?" The director on the old soil, is that the director of the Cleanup Bureau? Hearing this, brought by the red-haired director as an observer, Leon couldn't help but curiously raise an eyebrow. However, before he could open his mouth to ask, a warm hand grasped his. The director is on the old soil, searching for the things our humanity lost when escaping from the old soil. The importance of this mission is not even less than that of the Watcher's Palace. Through the hand, a soul wave transmitted, explaining the situation of the general director. The red-haired director said with slight frowning, "As for the Sagittarius director, it's fine. But if even Mr. Taurus thinks it's necessary to interrupt the mission and bring the director back, then the current situation in the Bureau is probably quite dire." Director. Triggered by the curiosity from the red-haired director's words, Leon clasped her hand in return and asked curiously, "What exactly is the general director looking for on the old soil? Is it something more important than the safety of the Cleanup Bureau?" "Not quite more important than the Cleanup Bureau, but not much less so." After a slight hesitation, the red-haired director leaned back slightly, then sternly admonished. The situation regarding the General Director is Level 5 intelligence, known only to the Yellow Road Director. You may listen now, but you mustn't tell anyone, not even Emma or your sister. Wow, is this information that important? Seeing Leon's slightly surprised expression, the red-haired director explained through a soul wave. This matter has to be talked about from a long time ago. When our human ancestors fled from the doomed old soil, nearly everything was taken by the supreme four-pillar gods. Although they later managed to kill the four-pillar gods, the things taken were not retrieved. And the general director suspects these things were left on the old soil by the four-pillar gods. Therefore, he went back with Aries, Virgo, and Scorpio directors, taking advantage of the temporal stability of the old soil to try to find the things seized from our ancestors. What exactly are the things that were taken? Are they abnormal objects even stronger than the Watcher's Palace? They might be even more important than the Watcher's Palace. If those things are truly retrieved, humanity as a race is bound to usher in a brighter future. The red-haired director pursed her lips with some yearning, saying, "According to what I heard from Mr. Taurus, the supreme four-pillar gods took four things from our ancestors: lifespan, inheritance, creation, and most importantly, connection." Lifespan, inheritance, creation, connection. What is this all about? In simple terms, our ancestors' maximum physical lifespan was the same as our human soul's extreme lifespan, approximately around 500 years. But after the lifespan was plundered by the old king, no matter how healthy, humans find it hard to live beyond 150 years. In Leon's astoundingly shocked expression, the red-haired director continued slowly. As for inheritance, it is the continuation of memory and knowledge. Before being plundered by the Crimson Overlord, our ancestors could directly pass on the knowledge they mastered through their bloodline, gaining mastery with age. And that which was respectively taken by the Omnia Cicada and Azure Sleep, creation and connection, refers to an almost never-ending burst of inspiration, and the ability to communicate through mental connections, perfectly expressing one's ideas and perfectly understanding the thoughts of others. 500 years of extreme lifespan, a bloodline that could transmit knowledge, inexhaustible endless inspiration, efficient and thorough mental communication. Is this even human anymore? Hard to believe, right? After glancing at the dumbstruck Leon behind her, the red-haired director blinked and said, "The first time I heard Mr. Taurus talk about it, I was also shocked to my core. But these are all very ancient. The ancestors of humanity are long gone, leaving only some corresponding records in the General Bureau's archives. Since the third-generation director, predecessors of the Cleanup Bureau have been intermittently trying to return to the old soil during temporal lulls to find what was taken from our ancestors, though with little success so far." By little success, does it mean those predecessors didn't come back empty-handed? A bit of a success, yes. Faced with Leon's inquiry, the red-haired director nodded slightly. When we first settled in this world, humans had difficulty living beyond 70 years. It was predecessors who retrieved some lifespan and raised this limit to about 150 years. The way we currently communicate through soul is a part of connection. As for the remaining creation and inheritance, very, very little of the former has been retrieved, with only a few people able to awaken this inspiration. And the latter is almost completely unrecuperated, seemingly having disappeared completely with the Crimson Overlord. Since we've retrieved a part of it, does it mean our human ancestors really could live to be 500 years old? And they had abilities like memory inheritance, infinite inspiration, and telepathy? How could a divine race with such ridiculous abilities nearly get wiped out? Were my ancestors a bit too disappointing? It seems there was some kind of major catastrophe, but what exactly happened, even Mr. Taurus isn't very clear. Through their clasped hands, Leon sensed a hint of confusion, and after thinking for a moment, the red-haired director explained. The initial directors who escorted our ancestors to this world might know what happened, but they mostly perished early. At that time, it was already difficult for humans to survive, and few thought about passing down history. Coupled with generations of reproduction later, These unverified pasts were gradually covered by what the illusion can created, leaving only fragmented records even in the headquarters. Perhaps only in old soil can we find the reason. All right then, after listening to this strange history of ancestral downfall, Leon couldn't help but lick his dry lips, slightly understanding the importance of this Tier 5 mission. Even if we don't retrieve all 4 lost artifacts, just finding one or even half of one completely will make the human race incredibly powerful in an instant. With such great prospects, it's hardly surprising that anyone with a bit of ambition would feel compelled to search, and it's no wonder the cleanup bureau is often shorthanded. Olivia! While Leon and the red-haired director were whispering, the deputy directors of the other Zodiac branch offices had almost finished stating their stances, and the attention of the Sagittarius director naturally turned, asking, "Currently, it's 5 votes against 5. On the proposal about directly activating the sunshine wheel to project the directors back from old soil, which side are you leaning towards?" 5 to 5. My vote is critical. Upon hearing this, the red-haired director pondered briefly and did not immediately answer, but asked, "Mr. Sagittarius, may I ask, regarding this proposal, what do you 3 directors think?" The Pisces director has some mental issues at the moment and is unable to vote. As for me and Mr. Taurus, one of us agrees and the other disagrees. So 6 to 6? And it's still down to my vote? Facing the expectant gazes from the deputy directors, the red-haired director couldn't help but frown, then turned back to glance at Leon and stealthily squeezed his hand. "Leon, what do you think?" "What? How did the right to decide such a major event concerning the future of humanity suddenly fall on my shoulders?" Feeling a bit of pressure from the significance behind the question, Leon's scalp tingled slightly. With the red-haired director's persistent inquiry, his throat couldn't help but move, and he hesitantly replied, "Maybe we should act cautiously and prioritize ensuring the cleanup bureau's safety." Even though those 4 treasures hidden in old soil are indeed tempting, and the director seemed to suggest that the opportunity for past exploration wasn't always available, isn't there still me? Perhaps after a few years when I've become more skillful, obtaining a badge like Time Traveler, I could also go and search for those 4 treasures later. There's no need to rush. Besides, with the Slaughter King Association watching eagerly and potentially causing trouble anytime, it could result in massive casualties. So prioritizing our current safety is more crucial. Olivia! After waiting for a while without an answer, the Sagittarius director couldn't help but urge, "It's just your vote left. Have you made up your mind?" "I have." Upon hearing that, the red-haired director nodded, releasing Leon's hand and replied confidently, "I believe human safety is more important. Bringing back the director and the 3 other directors would be better." After hearing the red-haired director's words, the Sagittarius director gave a soft hum, then relaxed slightly and said, "The result is 7 to 7. The number of people supporting the activation of the sunshine will didn't exceed half, so for now, we'll maintain the current situation. 7 to 7? The deputy directors were taken aback by this and cast puzzled looks towards the Sagittarius director on the main stage. Among those eligible to vote this time, 2 directors had 1 vote each, while the 11 Zodiac directors had 6 votes against 5. Shouldn't the result be 7 to 6? Who cast the extra vote? Sorry, the last opposing vote was cast by me. In the silence of the Sagittarius director, in the deputy's seating area above, the seat belonging to the Cancer director slowly lit up. A chubby male hologram raised his hand, politely greeting the deputy directors, then kindly explained, "The Sagittarius director believes that the recent palace event should be his full responsibility. Furthermore, in his current condition, he needs a long period of rest. So he contacted me, hoping I could return to replace him in overseeing the situation while he resides in the abyss. By the way," upon reaching this point, the Cancer director, who bore a shiny bald head and appeared like a benevolent, plump monk, suddenly paused. He then warmly surveyed the attendees before gently asking, "May I ask if the cleaner named Leon is present? If he is, could he come forward to meet me? Looking for me?" Faced with the kindly invitation from the new director he had never met, Leon was caught off guard and instinctively reached out to hold the red-haired director's hand, seeking clarification on this situation. However, just as he was about to grasp her hand, the red-haired director suddenly lifted her hand to tidy her hair, conveniently avoiding Leon's touch, then cleared her throat and said, "Leon, since Mr. Cancer wants to meet you, why don't you go and let him have a feel? Have a feel? Why not have a look?" Upon hearing the red-haired director, Leon's brows rose slightly, and he squinted in the direction of the Cancer director, discovering the director's eye sockets were sunken, seemingly devoid of eyes, indicating he was blind. "No need for that, although I don't have eyes, I can still sort of see people. You must be Leon? Very good." Turning to look at Leon with non-existent vision while assessing him, the plump-faced Cancer director chuckled, then said kindly, "You know, many over at the Abyss. Many demons know you, especially in the Gluttony Hell. Some little demons eager for power have already started sculpting your likeness." "Demons? Sculpting my statue?" After hearing what the Cancer director explained, although it seemed mostly like teasing, Leon's teeth couldn't help but ache, and he had to bite down several times to get over it. "Though the approach may have been a tad excessive, I still consider myself a decent person. These damn demons. Ah ha ha ha. You actually believed it." After glancing at Leon's awkward expression, the Cancer director suddenly burst out laughing twice before humorously teasing. "How could demons possibly sculpt your statue? Leaving aside whether they have the skill, those demons haven't even seen your appearance. How could they ensure the sculpture looks like you? Damn. Turns out you're just having fun. So the statues they worship are all ones I sold them. Ha! Couldn't help it, those demons offered way too much." In Leon's somewhat puzzled expression, the Cancer director blinked. He seemed slightly wistful as he explained, "You have no idea, the Abyss in nearby worlds is considered the hardest to manage. If those demons really united, it might take half the cleanup bureau to keep them under control. Fortunately, those Abyss demons are used to fighting amongst themselves, so it's unlikely they'll unite. With a little maneuvering by allying with or supporting a small part of them, the task of guarding becomes much easier, and the group I decided to support is the Abyss of Gluttony. Now your statue is a hot commodity over there. Selling them some stone-carved trinkets can reduce a lot of trouble, deepen the relationship, and even exchange for a bunch of rare materials. Not taking part in this business would be a real loss. Given how you put it, it's not impossible. But why does your style feel different from others? Mr. Cancer." Unable to maintain his composure, Leon couldn't help but tentatively ask, "What exactly do you mean by telling me all this?" "No particular reason, just purely optimistic about you." After rubbing his own round belly, the Cancer director smiled as he said, "I'm several years older than Taurus, and I don't have much time left. I need to quickly develop some successors, and after reviewing your file, I feel you might be suitable to learn the secret techniques of Cancer Palace, so I called you here to familiarize yourself." "Ah, I thought you'd use my image rights for business and give me some dividends. Speaking of which, what are Cancer's secret techniques?" Unfortunately, the Cancer director not only had no intentions of respecting those image rights, but also didn't plan on explaining the Cancer Palace's secret techniques. He simply reached out, patted Leon's arm, and cheerfully advised, "All right, you go back and wait for notification. Currently in the Bureau, there are roughly 3 to 5 other cleaners suspected to have the aptitude for learning Cancer's secret techniques apart from you. Once I've reached them and gathered everyone, I'll teach you together." "Ah, okay." Although he didn't receive dividends, the opportunity to learn a secret technique was quite precious, which Leon naturally couldn't refuse Cancer director's invitation. As he contemplated asking about the ability of Cancer's secret techniques, the Cancer director withdrew his hand from Leon's arm, and everything around him suddenly retreated uncontrollably. Leon felt a brief blur in front of his eyes, and his body was immediately sent back a great distance, standing behind the red-haired director again, while at the same time, Cancer director's seat faintly lit up, and a familiar gentle voice once more sounded in Leon's ear. "Sorry, I cast the last dissenting vote." Hold on, haven't you said this once before? Blinking at the somewhat bewildered Leon, the cancer director amusingly said. The Sagittarius director believes that regarding the palace event, he should take full responsibility, hoping I might return to host the overall situation for him. As Leon snapped out from his daze, looking at cancer director who stood from his seat, politely greeting the deputy directors while explaining calmly, he subconsciously lowered his head and glanced at his left arm. A plump-clawed, round-bellied big crab pattern was slowly fading its original color, quietly hiding beneath his skin, and his arm still retained the slight touch of cancer director's palm. So, all that really happened, but it didn't actually occur in reality. It was more of a spiritual or mental communication. Leon, noticing the unsteady breathing of the person behind him, the red-haired director turned around and gave Leon a puzzled look. You seem... Oh, I see. After observing Leon's arm, the red-haired director's eyebrows initially furrowed slightly before a look of realization flashed across his eyes. Mr. Cancer just had a chat with you? Seems like it. After touching his arm, looking at the Cancer Palace secret technique mark prompt, Leon said somewhat uncertainly. My consciousness seemed to be pulled over just now. Mr. Cancer said he wanted to get to know me, and mentioned I might have a talent for Cancer's secret techniques, planning to let me give it a shot. The secret techniques of Cancer Palace? Upon hearing this, the red-haired director pondered for a moment, then nodded slightly with agreement. Indeed, looking at your past record, you probably do have the talent to learn Cancer's secret techniques. Director. After getting the red-haired director's judgment, Leon couldn't help but curiously ask, what exactly are Cancer's secret techniques? Are they powerful? Very powerful. If you only consider combat effectiveness, the destruction secret technique of Ares Palace is in the top tier, and Cancer's devouring secret technique follows right behind in the second tier. Devouring? Yes, it's about eating, but what you eat are abnormal objects. After glancing in Cancer Director's direction, the red-haired director didn't continue partaking in the ensuing meeting discussion, but instead grabbed Leon's hand and explained. The effect of Cancer's secret techniques is somewhat similar to some abilities of that ram. Just like you said, if you gather both the ram's tongue and stomach, you can temporarily increase your Leon value to 60 by devouring abnormal objects. While abnormal devouring of Cancer Palace doesn't increase your Leon value, it can accumulate a large amount of abnormalities within the body, then release them all at once at a critical moment, and the accumulation has no upper limit. Hiss! Upon hearing this, Leon couldn't help but take a sharp breath. So the abnormalities devoured using Cancer's secret techniques, would they not require consumption of one's own power when released? No, the required consumption still needs to be paid, and not a bit less. Oh. If it's like that, then isn't the secret technique just a storage pouch? Doesn't sound particularly beneficial for combat? Leon, the scope of abnormal objects is actually broader than what you understand. Sometimes it isn't necessarily a thing. After glancing back at Leon, the red-haired director pinched his palm as a reminder. Existences like the deceased, demons, holy spirits, nightmares, even the true God, these non-human beings can also be considered types of abnormalities. The true God counts as an edible abnormal. Hiss! Doesn't that mean? It's exactly as you think. With a slight curve at the corner of his mouth, the red-haired director, who seemed to be in a good mood, continued. The most powerful aspect of the Cancer Palace secret technique lies in the devouring itself. Once caught by Mr. Cancer, not only will the opponent's abnormal object be consumed, but all non-human entities that meet the conditions will be forcibly devoured by him, with almost no chance of escape. What does this condition refer to? It should be the Leon value. The red-haired director blinked and said, initially, when you start learning the Cancer secret technique, you might only be able to devour targets with Leon values less than 1/10 of your own. Yet, the deeper you master the technique, the more relaxed this condition becomes. With the current skill level of the Cancer director, he can likely devour targets with Leon values less than 9/10 of his own. It said that the sixth-generation cancer director could even devour opponents whose power exceeds his own by 1/10. Goodness! No wonder, the cancer director said after looking at my file. He thought I had the talent to learn the cancer secret technique. It turns out he's an old food god. By the way, Leon, although the cancer secret technique excels in combat abilities, if you want to learn this technique, there are some things you need to know. Ignoring the arguing between the Sagittarius director and the deputy directors, the red-haired director leaned back without changing his expression and sarcastically continued. Don't be fooled by Mr. Cancer's seemingly amicable demeanor. In reality, his style is very similar to that of the Sagittarius director. Both are hardliners within the Bureau. But unlike the Sagittarius director, who is verbally tough, Mr. Cancer is gentle in speech but exceedingly firm when dealing with matters. During his 20 years overseeing the Abyss, it wasn't without attempts from demons to stir trouble, but most troublemakers ended up being devoured. So he actually has a soft spot for hardliners. When you learn the secret technique from him, you might want to act a bit tough. All right. Additionally, his bulging belly is indeed the safest prison in the entire cleanup bureau. Many tricky individuals are sent there, and it is unclear how many violent opponents are held inside. This prison requires a generational inheritance. If you truly master the cancer secret technique, in the future, when Mr. Cancer passes away, all prisoners held in his belly would need to be transferred to yours in one go. What? After learning the cancer secret technique, I also inherit this large belly and moonlight as the warden for the cleanup bureau? After listening to the red-haired director's introduction, Leon couldn't help but look toward the cancer director's belly. His expression slightly strained as he couldn't help but ask. Then, if Mr. Cancer passes away, but the new secret technique successor isn't strong enough, or if no one learns the technique, what happens to those evil gods in the prison then? The Bureau has precautions for this. The devouring secret technique requires very high skill, but accepting prisoners already controlled by the technique and maintaining the prison has much lower requirements. Just slightly above entry-level suffices. And if the cancer director's position breaks the succession, and no one successfully masters the cancer secret technique, his body and soul will be temporarily frozen before his passing. Afterward, when new learners come along, it can simply be mouth-to-mouth absorbed. What? Mouth-to-mouth? Yes, exactly mouth-to-mouth. Looking at Leon's shocked expression, the red-haired director raised her eyebrows slightly, then playfully retorted. The devouring secret technique of the Cancer Palace requires the mouth to be executed. If not using the mouth, what else could be used? Then, using the mouth, what is the furthest distance possible when transferring prisoners? Completely unable to leave, needs hugging closely. Oh. There's no way around it, considering the importance of many prisoners. Caution can't be compromised. Glancing at the cancer director slyly contacting Leon behind him, the red-haired director held Leon's hand calmly and explained. The cancer secret technique can only suppress the internal prisoners. Once the distance grows and the technique is interrupted, it's likely the prisoners could directly escape. So when transferring prisoners, lips must remain tightly sealed. Oh my! After understanding the specific method for transferring prisoners, Leon couldn't help but look up, shocked, towards the direction of the cancer director. The cancer director, holding his belly and cheerfully listening to the deputy directors argue, seemed to notice his gaze, then grinned widely with his oily and plump lips, smiling appreciatively at him, and subconsciously licked his lips. Hiss! Having seen the full plump lips resembling fatty sausages of the cancer director, Leon instinctively shivered slightly before lowering his head honestly, avoiding Mr. Cancer's appreciative gaze. Well, this secret technique is not a must-learn. Goodbye. All right. After several hours of arguing with the deputy directors without coming to a satisfactory result, the Sagittarius director, who was presiding over the meeting, couldn't help but massage his temples firmly. Then, raising his hand to signal for silence, he furrowed his brow and said, "Regarding the proposal for recalling the director, we'll discuss up to here today. Since there's no conclusion, let's maintain the status quo for now and don't rush to call them back." Apart from the matter of recalling the director, there's another very important issue that must be informed to you. Mr. Torres's condition isn't good and may soon not hold on. Upon hearing the Sagittarius director, the red-haired director, who was sneaking glances and chuckling at Leon, couldn't help but have a change of expression as her eyebrows suddenly shot up. However, as if anticipating her reaction, the Sagittarius director, using an ominous beginning, turned the meeting room silent before immediately changing tack to explain. Though there's no life threat, Mr. Torres's soul separated from his body and climbed over 3,000 palace ascending steps, suffering considerable damage, making it difficult to sustain previous conditions, therefore possibly resigning from the director's position ahead of schedule. This old guy remains as detestable as ever. After angrily glaring at the Sagittarius director, the red-haired director sighed deeply, leaning back on her seat, while the Sagittarius director glanced at Leon behind her before continuing his announcement. Including those betrayed by Aquarius, there are currently 2 positions vacant for directors, and with Mr. Cancer growing old and carrying old injuries, he might retire early within a few years. Even with the Sagittarius director's remark seemingly implying a short life ahead, Mr. Cancer didn't get angry. Instead, he nodded cheerfully, saying, "Yes, I don't have long left to live. Counting mine, maybe 3 positions will be vacant in one go. Plus, since Sagittarius made a mistake this time and has to guard the abyss, Pisces' situation is quite special. It's best to find successors ahead of time. Thus, we Old Guard decided to commence a combined 5-palace secret skill selection involving Aquarius, Taurus, Sagittarius, Pisces, and Cancer, aiming to cultivate new inheritors before we all die. Besides directors and the Yellow Road director's recommendations, the Star Palace will also directly choose. All level 2 and above cleaners with corresponding Star Palace marks on their arms must participate in the selection. Arm with the corresponding mark. So Cancer director's pat on my arm should count as a director recommendation, right? After hearing the arrangement from Mr. Cancer, Leon instinctively looked down at his left arm and felt his mind go blank. The round crab from before unexpectedly reappeared at some point. It held a verdant porcelain bottle in its left claw, while the crooked bow was hung on its right claw, boasting menacingly toward the bull and Pisces opposite. What does this mean again? Looking at the tattoos on his arm that were getting tangled and even starting to tear at each other, Leon, after a moment of silence, reached out and poked the waist of the red-haired director. "What's up, director? Look back for a moment." Upon hearing Leon's words, the red-haired director couldn't help but turn her head in surprise, glancing at his arm along the direction of Leon's gaze. When she saw the 5 marks charging left and right on Leon's arm, dazzling in their chaotic fight, even someone as knowledgeable as her couldn't help but gasp in shock. "How do you have so many?" "I don't know how it happened either." Shaking his head slightly, Leon asked somewhat hesitantly, "Has this ever happened before?" "It has happened." Looking at the 5 marks on Leon's arm fighting amongst themselves, the red-haired director replied with a somewhat dazed look. "During the last secret ritual selection, there was a cleaner from the Aries branch who gained the qualification to learn the 2-palace secret technique. But like you, being selected by 5 palace secret skills at once seems unprecedented, and I've never heard of marks fighting each other." "Alright, let's stay a bit longer after this meeting ends." After studying the turmoil on Leon's arm without any clue, the red-haired director decisively made a decision. "For safety's sake, we should ask Mr. Torres about this. The marks on your body don't seem quite normal." "It's normal. Being selected by 5 palaces is perfectly normal." After listening to the red-haired director's concerned account, the Taurus director, who appeared somewhat weak, struggled to sit upright, holding on to the armrests of the chair, then took Leon's arm and explained kindly. Although the Star Palace selection sounds complicated, it actually examines very few things, namely the aptitude to practice secret techniques, compatibility with the corresponding Star Palace, and the upper limit of one's potential. To put it simply, you must first have the talent to learn the secret technique. Secondly, your personality and traits must match to gain the recognition of the corresponding Star Palace. And finally, your upper limit must not be too poor, at least capable of crossing the difference between man and God. Otherwise, learning the secret technique is meaningless. After explaining the logic of the Star Palace selection, the Taurus director looked at Leon, who seemed to have just grasped something, and said with a smile, "Leon, you've already been initiated into the secret techniques of the Taurus and Aquarius palaces, which is enough to prove your talent for learning Star Palace secret techniques. As for having, you have already, by other means, crossed the difference between man and God a few times briefly, so that level certainly won't stump you. Then what about the compatibility with the Star Palaces?" Taking a cushion and placing it under the Taurus director's waist to support her, the red-haired director asked worriedly, "It's one thing for ordinary people to be compatible with 1, 2, or even 3 Star Palaces, but this time only 5 palace selections have taken place, and Leon has been picked by all 5 at once. Is that really normal? Could it be that Aquarius left some trick on him? Don't worry, I'm not sure about the Aquarius Palace, but as I've observed, Leon's compatibility with the other 4 Star Palaces is indeed quite high." After comforting the red-haired director by patting her arm, the Taurus director laughed in a good mood, then explained gently, "To use the Taurus Palace, which I know best, as an example, those who possess traits of benevolence, compassion, loyalty, integrity, steadiness, meticulousness, and sticking to one's beliefs are likely to gain the favor of the Taurus Palace. As for the Sagittarius, Pisces, Cancer, and Aquarius palaces, they respectively favor those who are willing to sacrifice, refuse to be subordinate, are sensitive and kind, and have a strong desire for knowledge. From what I've seen, you seem to have no lack of these traits, Leon." Stop it. If you keep praising me, I won't be able to hide my smile any longer." Feeling a bit undeserving under the gaze full of great admiration from the Taurus director, Leon couldn't help but scratch the back of his head and said, somewhat bashfully, "Actually, I'm not as good as you say." "Ha. Indeed." "Ah." Surprised by the sudden turn of the Taurus director, Leon looked up bewilderedly at her, and she said with a smile, "After all, Star Palaces don't have self-awareness, so this selection is hard to be absolutely precise. Jealousy and refusal to be subordinate, loyalty and stubborn rigidity, in the eyes of the Star Palaces, might be the same thing. So, being chosen by 5 Star Palaces at once doesn't mean you only have advantages. It might also mean some of your inner shortcomings have been revealed by the corresponding Star Palaces." "Haha. Don't be so serious." Seeing Leon looking slightly embarrassed, the Taurus director couldn't help but laugh, then said warmly, "I was just joking earlier. You're a good kid. I've always known that and never doubted it. As for the Star Palace selection, you don't need to take it too seriously." At this point, as if remembering something, the Taurus director advised with a somewhat complex expression, "Since you have been judged eligible to practice the secret technique, feel free to learn without pressure. Olivia and I have your back. Moreover, no matter how important this selection is, don't force yourself to conform to the traits of any particular palace. No matter how great a Star Palace is, ultimately, it's an abnormal object. Be careful not to be influenced by it, and under no circumstances become its slave." Hearing this, Leon paused slightly, then glanced at the red-haired director, who, being familiar with the Taurus director, had already noticed the unusual tone in her words and asked softly with furrowed brows, "Mr. Taurus, you seem a bit different from before today. A bit more open. Did Aquarius say something to you in the end? And is it related to the Star Palaces?" We did have a chat." The Taurus director glanced at the red-haired director helplessly after realizing her inadvertent sigh had been noticed, then frankly admitted, "Aquarius has done many bad things and isn't trustworthy. But he completed a replacement at the time and was almost another me. Given my understanding of myself, he shouldn't have been lying in that state. Aquarius told me, after completing the secret technique practice and being selected as a holder of the corresponding Star Palace, one would be increasingly influenced by the Star Palace. With the original traits enhanced over hundreds of years, it might turn extreme and radical. Just keep this to yourselves and don't tell anyone else. I'm just giving Leon a heads up. If you really become some director, you can be more cautious when using star palaces. ZZZZ. By carefully listening to the related account, you have gained a large amount of information about the Star Dome Compass Yellow Road. Your resistance to this abnormal object has significantly increased, and you can now shield from deep levels of influence. Since the badge system judged that I have obtained the information and gave the resistance increase prompt, Mr. Taurus's speculation is correct. The Star Palace indeed affects the user's tendency. Looking at the kindly disposed director of Taurus in front of him, Leon nodded vigorously and then sincerely expressed gratitude. I understand. Thank you for your reminder, Mr. Taurus. Haha. No need to be so formal. After smiling kindly, the director of Taurus said gently, considering my age, I could be your grandmother many times over. I've always treated youngsters like you as my own children, and I'm about to step down as director, so don't call me Mr. anymore. Feels oddly distant. Ah, okay. After agreeing aloud, Leon and the red-haired director couldn't help but exchange a glance, simultaneously seeing a hint of surprise in each other's eyes. Compared to before, Mr. Taurus seemed less serious after ascending the palace. He appeared more cheerful and easygoing. So is it because he's about to step down, start separating from the Star Palace, thereby reducing the influence? By the way, Olivia, while Leon and the red-haired director exchanged glances, the director of Taurus suddenly became serious and then spoke earnestly. Andrew asked me to convey to you and Leon that during the Aquarius attack on your Virgin branch, he chose to sacrifice you and didn't provide the promised support. He's very sorry for that. SK. Upon hearing the director of Taurus's words, the red-haired director and Leon's lips twitched slightly, maintaining composure on the surface while a hint of disdain appeared in their eyes. Such a big issue, and he just apologizes with words? And he doesn't even come to apologize himself but asks the director of Taurus to relay it? Is this really the attitude of apologizing? That old man is entirely insincere. As compensation, he'll negotiate with the god of wine to get a batch of top-quality wine for you, and he'll send a bottle each week until he dies. As for Leon, aside from teaching you the Archer secret technique wholeheartedly, he's sacrificed his lifespan and used 2 wish-type abnormal objects to help locate the other parts of that big demon, and it shouldn't be long before they are all gathered. Moreover, aside from you two, other members of the Virgin branch will also receive compensation, at least 1 suitable abnormal object for each. How about it? Are you satisfied with this compensation? Ah, don't mention compensation. After licking their lips, the red-haired director smiled broadly and waved, saying, while what was done wasn't exactly proper, Archer didn't have any selfish motives, and it's understandable. Indeed, we've already felt the sincerity in Archer's apology. Oh, you two. Looking at the two whose attitudes suddenly shifted, the director of Taurus shook his head involuntarily and said solemnly, since you're satisfied, I won't vouch too much for Andrew, but I still hope you understand that part of his decision was influenced by the Star Palace contamination. And the reason he applied to replace Cancer and go to the Abyss to suppress the demon is in hopes that this process will help correct those undesirable influences. So it's still hoped that you don't hold a grudge against him. Okay, we're done discussing Andrew's matter. Next, it's your turn. At this point, the director of Taurus's expression softened again and then joked with Leon. As someone chosen by the 5 palaces, destined to rise as one of the 12 directors in the future, I should take advantage of the fact you're not yet a big shot and butter you up. I happen to have time now, Leon. Would you like to accept my guidance first and learn some of the abnormal forging secret techniques from Taurus Palace? I'd really love that. Haha, though influenced a bit by Olivia, you're still essentially a good kid. Seeing Leon quickly agree, then looking expectantly for class, the smiling director of Taurus conjured a large table with a wave, took out many materials for practice, and cheerfully invited, come on, try refining with these, so I can see how much progress you've made. Okay. Under the encouraging gaze of the director of Taurus, Leon, recognized as a secret technique genius by the 5 palaces, was filled with confidence, took out a big iron pot from the mirror world, set it up, then grabbed 2 old thermoses and began pouring water into the pot. Instead of rough, it's more like a complete mishmash of methods. Why does it look familiar? Upon seeing Leon take out that rusty iron pot while preparing his own refining tools, the director of Taurus paused, then tentatively asked, "Leon, what's with this pot?" It was taught by the 3rd-generation director. Although the square-headed old man once threatened me not to talk about receiving his forging lessons everywhere. But the director of Taurus isn't a gossip, and even if I don't say it, she'd probably figure it out, so Leon didn't hide it, stirring the water in the iron pot while recounting. Previously, the 3rd generation told me that I should not care too much about the quality of forging tools, because the source of anomalies is emotion, obsession, and anticipation, which ultimately is the power of the mind, and the mind doesn't have a standard answer. So as long as the strength of forging intent is strong enough and the materials used meet the standards, even using a big iron pot and plain water, one can forge the finest abnormal object. Emotion, mind, obsession, that damn old senior is spreading his destructive teachings again. And now he's persuaded Leon? Listening to Leon earnestly relay the outrageous philosophy, even someone as good-tempered as the director of Taurus couldn't help but twitch slightly, then forced a smile. Well, that's also fine, since we haven't officially started learning. Go ahead and refine one to show me your progress. Okay. Searching through the materials on the table, Leon selected 2 of his favorite demon-type materials, feeling the harmonious connection, and took a deep breath confidently. I actually have a feeling that this time I might really succeed. Name: Kangaroo Demon Statue. Corrupt. Curse. Appearance: a small animal sculpture with a short nose, tiny eyes, pointed ears, and face similar to a rodent. When approached after a full meal, intermittent exertion like panting can be heard. Ability: Demon's Chrysanthemum, Square Curse. Cost: the next bowel movement after use has a high probability of causing constipation. File: Arcane Inheritor Leon Lane, using 2 secret techniques from the Cleanup Bureau, crafted a special abnormal object with a demon's pouch and certain bear-like demon flesh. When this abnormal object is activated, all creatures that directly gaze at the bizarre statue will, during their next bowel movement, expel feces with sharp-cornered square shapes. Evaluation: Humph, 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 ah. Contamination value: 0.1, maximum contamination value 9. After observing the magical ability of the kangaroo demon statue and listening to its intermittent and laborious humming, akin to someone with chronic constipation, Leon couldn't help but fall into silence. Oh no, if we put aside the past, before this I had just casually learned a bit from the director of Taurus, and I was essentially an amateur. But now that I've received certification from 5 palaces all at once, surely I must be somewhat of a secret technique genius, even if not a once-in-a-millennium one. What on earth is this? While Leon was silently pondering, the director of Taurus picked up the kangaroo demon statue he had refined, examining it with a hint of curiosity. The shape was intact and orderly, with no visible flaws or damage, proving that the essence of the material had been integrated into the refining. The fluctuation felt smooth and seamless, meaning it could most likely be activated normally, and the stability of the abnormal object would be high. Additionally, the aura was particularly unique, almost like holding a living demon, giving off a rather fascinating, vibrant vitality. So, although the refining process was a bit crazy, essentially like stewing it in a big iron pot, the quality of the finished product seemed pretty good. If its ability is decent, it could even serve as a primary abnormal object for 2nd and 3rd level cleaners. Not bad. Not bad. Quite an improvement. After measuring the strength of the kangaroo demon statue with a small tool, the director of Taurus's kindly face broke into a cheerful smile as he joyfully praised. Many of the materials I selected for you are actually rather incomplete. If you were a beginner, you'd be lucky to have a 20% success rate, and the stability of the refined product wouldn't be high. You've only been learning secret techniques from me for a short while, and I originally thought you could only produce an abnormal object whose effectiveness decreases with use or breaks after a few uses, but I didn't expect such a perfect final product. Your talent in secret techniques is indeed exceptional. It's alright, I guess. It's not just alright. It's truly remarkable. I spent over a year learning from the previous director, and I still might not have reached your level. After showering Leon with praise, likely due to the reassurance of having someone to succeed him, the director of Taurus laughed heartily twice, then turned cheerfully to the red-haired director beside him, saying, "Olivia, your virgin branch might really produce a director of Taurus. You should be prepared." Olivia, seeing the red-haired director, slightly doubtful and staring intently at Leon, the director of Taurus couldn't help but inquire, "What's the matter? Why do you have that expression?" Why do I have this expression? Let's put it this way, although I don't understand secret techniques much, I know Leon well enough to say that this thing is definitely off. Without responding to the director of Taurus, the red-haired director squinted at the somewhat dazed Leon, asking, "Leon, what exactly is the ability of this abnormal object you've refined?" Leon couldn't help but let out an awkward chuckle at the question, then sheepishly murmured, "This thing is called Kangaroo Demon Statue, and as for its specific effect, well, it's similar to the characteristics of a kangaroo." Kangaroo? Upon hearing Leon's words, the red-haired director and director of Taurus exchanged puzzled glances, then immediately asked, "What is a kangaroo? What are its characteristics?" Kangaroo, well, it's an animal, and as for its characteristics, let's put it this way, it poops square-shaped droppings. So the effect of this thing is to make people poop square-shaped feces. Seeing Leon's slightly flushed face, the director of Taurus's right hand holding the kangaroo demon statue suddenly shook. Then his lips twitched twice before he asked in a peculiar tone, "That ability is quite unique, and then, besides this, does the statue have any other abilities?" "No more." "So, you used the pouch of a stolen demon, the flesh and blood of a belly-hand bear, 2 large bundles of cursed twigs, half a jar of imprint paste, and quite a few long singing rock fragments, just to refine this thing?" The director of Taurus went over all the materials Leon had just consumed repeatedly in his mind, but still could not find the connection between them and square-shaped poop. Looking down at this wicked creation that had sullied his lifetime of learning, the soul-shaken director of Taurus opened his mouth twice but then closed it again, feeling as though he had a multitude of questions but didn't know where to begin. "I knew it." Glancing at the emotional state of the director of Taurus, the red-haired director, who had witnessed Leon's refining talent before, couldn't help but cover her face, then forced a smile to smooth things over. "Well, Leon's been quite busy recently, with tasks one after the other, so he hasn't had much time to practice. He only learned a bit from the third-generation director, so the refined object might be somewhat off, but the potential should still be there." Indeed, after listening to the red-haired director's explanation, the tumultuously shaken soul of the director of Taurus finally settled down. Although the effect is intriguing, Leon's success rate and the stability in making abnormal objects are incredibly impressive, so his talent is definitely not lacking. The reason he produced such a thing is likely the result of being misguided by that old third-generation director. As long as I invest more effort in the future to correct those jumbled ideas taught by the old director, with the secret technique talent Leon currently displays, his future achievements will surely surpass mine, enough to protect humanity for another 100 years. "It's okay. That's probably not your issue." After inwardly cursing a certain old individual who ruins without fail, the director of Taurus tried to calm his rapid breathing, then took out a new batch of materials, kind-heartedly instructing. There might have been some odd things mixed in that practice batch of materials, and the refining method taught by the third-generation director is inherently unstable, so issues are normal. I'm not saying the third-generation director's refining skills are inadequate, but he is quite a special existence, so his methods may not suit humans. Therefore, let's set aside his theories for now, and go through the orthodox refining techniques with me. All right? Although sensing a bit of foreboding instinctively, Leon, being genuinely interested in secret smithing techniques and seeing how wholeheartedly the director of Taurus was teaching, figured backing out now would not be gracious, so under the reluctant gaze of the red-haired director, he imitated the director of Taurus's operations, forcing himself to continue learning. Name: Intimate Sweater. Wish: Element. Appearance: a slightly outdated and roughly woven light golden wool sweater with excellent warmth, suitable for spring and autumn. It provides a body-hugging effect that effectively showcases a man's physique. Ability: Desire for closeness, microelectric shock. Cost: when wearing this abnormal object, if you get too close to animals with fur, they might dislike you. File: Arcane Inheritor Leon Lane. Missing a thin wool sweater. Combine two secret techniques of the Cleanup Bureau, using fragments of the former god of love's bow and arrow as the base, supplemented with the wool of paradise rocky sheep to create this special abnormal object. When this abnormal object is activated, all creatures approaching you with a desire for closeness will experience a static shock that makes their fingertips tingle slightly upon touching your body. Evaluation: Hiss: could this be the feeling of heart fluttering? Contamination value: 0.1. Maximum contamination value 28. Name: Medicine-seeking dog whistle. Ritual: Exploration. Appearance: a slightly chipped metal whistle which, when blown forcefully holding one end, will summon a mature dog-like creature with a green complexion from the nearby bushes, frantically searching for something. Ability: Ritual creature calling. Item seeking. Cost: if the whistle-blowing time is too long, your cheeks might hurt, and you might drool when sleeping at night. File: Arcane Inheritor Leon Lane. Based on the saying that dogs will seek appropriate herbs when sick, combine two secret techniques of the Cleanup Bureau, using the emblem of secret dogs and whistlegrass to create this special abnormal object. When you are in a state of poisoning or other abnormalities, actively blowing this abnormal object will summon a canine creature with a very keen nose to find the urgently needed wild herbs for you. But there's also a 99.999% chance of being led to the nearest open public toilet. Evaluation: Woof. In my experience, if you eat this stuff, you'll get better. After all, woof, we're friends. Don't stand on ceremony with me. Contamination value: 0.1. Maximum contamination value 41. Name: Hard knee cartilage. Miracle. Control. Appearance: two knee bones as soft as marshmallows. They seem to frequently bend and touch the ground in life, causing significant wear to the cartilage. Ability: Divine's Knee. Command Control. Cost: within 1 week of using this abnormal object, your knees will temporarily lose the ability to bend. File: Arcane Inheritor Leon Lane. According to combining two secret techniques, using the knee bones of ancient humans as the base, supplemented by finger bones of the controlling demon god to create this special abnormal object. Once the target completes a full-body prostration level kneeling to you, these dignity-fulfilled knee bones will temporarily replace the target's knees and command their body to head to a destination specified by you. Evaluation: come on, kneel down. I'm begging you to do something for me. Contamination value: 0.1. Maximum contamination value 59. Well, the things I created this time seem to be slightly more useful than before. Watching the Taurus director lying on the chair trembling, looking utterly despondent, Leon, who changed into his new wool sweater, couldn't help but awkwardly tug at the corners of his mouth, then desperately tried to salvage his reputation by saying, for example, this dog whistle, although it will mostly lead to open public toilets, but if I were kidnapped by a demon god and taken to a world without toilets, then maybe I could follow that dog to slowly find my way back. And these two knee bones, although the conditions for them to take effect are rather stringent, I could totally defeat them to submission first, and then command him to turn himself in to the Cleanup Bureau. They're still somewhat useful, right? After hearing Leon's words, the Taurus director on the deck chair couldn't help but turn his head to glance at him, and upon seeing the wool sweater Leon was wearing, his whole body was instantly overwhelmed with a surge of uncontrollable blood flow, causing dizziness, and hurriedly turned back. Yes, these two things can indeed be used that way, but if you could make them submit in a complete prostration, then what's the point of having them? Moreover, most importantly, do you know what materials you have used? Furniture fragment with true God's authority, complete fur of paradise sacred beast, secret ritual herbs that only grow in the land of night, precious remains voluntarily left by human ancestors. These materials I had originally planned to reserve for you, if used properly, should produce at least 2 abnormal objects with over 60 Leon value points, but in your hands, heart hurts, very hurts. After pressing his somewhat arrhythmic heart, the Taurus director waved his hand weakly and said, Leon, your talent is still commendable, at least your success rate is indeed very high. Even material of true God level can be controlled, but perhaps you should try elsewhere? Don't misunderstand. I don't mean not to teach you, it's just that not only my Taurus Star Palace has chosen you, so I can't keep holding on to you all the time, I have to give others a chance as well. I'm feeling a bit uncomfortable. Maybe you all should head back first. Then, sorry for disturbing you. Facing the Taurus director's dismissal order, Leon, aware of his deficiencies, couldn't help but respond awkwardly and wished to quickly escape this embarrassing environment. However, before he could turn around, the Taurus director lying on the deck chair continued to speak weakly. Also, those 2 things on the table, take them with you, they're yours. But their materials are quite rare. Why don't you try to dismantle them again? Maybe? No dismantling. Take them with you instead. Interrupting Leon's courtesy, the Taurus director, with his back towards them, pressed firmly on his heart, pleading tremulously. Really, take them quickly. Just seeing them makes my heart beat frantically. I'm sorry. I really didn't do it on purpose, it's just beyond my control. Watching the bent Taurus director on the deck chair, having clearly suffered a great impact, Leon's guilt was overwhelming. Under the helpless escort of the red-haired director, he dejectedly left the Taurus director's room. Though he didn't learn much about Taurus's secret techniques this time, with the Taurus director's instructions, the root of the refining problem seems to have been found. While learning secret smithing techniques, Leon was deeply influenced by the 3rd-generation director, whose core refining theory was from the heart, emphasizing the call of one's inner self. The problem is, with a soul second to none, Leon's heart was filled with a myriad of chaotic knowledge and various extremely abstract weird memes. Once opted to listen to the inner call, the abnormal objects naturally doubled the abstraction. It's all the 3rd gen's fault. Achoo! With a thunderous sneeze, the flock of crows residing in the realm of the dead's, Sage's cemetery, were startled into flight. Countless feathers, blacker than ink, scattered everywhere, landing on the bulging graves one by one. Damn! A voice filled with annoyance cursed as the 38th grave mound from left to right under the old locust tree on the east side of the Sage's cemetery suddenly bulged upwards. Someone pushed themselves out from inside. Damn it! My coffin's gone moldy. Kicking the lid off his coffin, the 3rd director sat up, his face full of disgruntlement. He pulled out a handkerchief and vigorously blew the mold spores from his nose, then glared accusingly at his tombstone and scolded. Your dampness is driving me crazy. Can you move a bit further away? Iron Badger, I'm here for you. A sharp and crisp sound of hooves came from the thick white mist behind the tombstone. A tall doe, enveloped in dense fog, emerged and stopped beside the director's coffin. Where's your mask? Glancing at the chaotic pile of the director's coffin, the doe with a corporeal form asked sternly. According to our past agreement, whenever the mask signals, you must wear it and answer one question from us about the cleanup bureau. Where is your mask? It's not every time the mask reacts that I have to deal with you. According to our initial agreement, I only need to engage with you once every 20 years if I feel like it. After correcting the doe's statement, the 3rd director crawled out of his coffin and with a wave, broke open the grave next door, dragging out his neighbor's coffin. Amidst the shouts of his startled neighbor, The old man pried open the coffin board and took a black honey badger mask from his neighbor's face, casually tossing it to the doe not far away. Here, I was worried about losing it, so I put it in someone else's grave. So I'm not breaching any contract. But since you're already here, let's not be redundant. Just ask what you want to know. This old bastard, he never really took the promise seriously. Looking down at the mask at her feet, the doe couldn't help but show anger. But seeing the director's defiant look, she suppressed her rage and asked with a harsh tone, "That cleaner named Leon from the Virgin Branch, did you give him an abnormal object? If so, what exactly does it do?" Hearing the doe's inquiry, the director, who was cleaning his ear, paused slightly. He squinted at the doe, suspiciously asking, "For the one question in 20 years, you chose this?" "Yes." That's interesting." Dusting the mold from his body, the director shook his blocky head and circled the giant doe twice, then curiously asked, "To have you use up your question and even risk coming to see me, has that kid Leon caused you a lot of trouble?" "Iron Badger, I'm the one asking questions here, not you." Glared at with the director's greedy eyes, the doe felt a chill down her spine and angrily said, "You better understand the situation. If it weren't for us, you would have ceased to exist long ago. Now I demand you to truthfully answer my question according to our agreement." "Heh." After the doe finished her reprimand, the old blocky-headed man chuckled coldly and said disdainfully, "Let me repeat. The agreement I made with your Slaughter King Association was that as long as I answer one of your questions truthfully every 20 years, you must maintain my existence. So whether to answer this question depends entirely on my mood. If you don't understand that, you better leave." "Aren't you afraid we will?" "What the hell am I afraid of?" Spitting at the threatening doe, the blocky-headed old man scoffed. "The agreement was made when I was alive. What does it have to do with the dead me? Plus, I'm just a lingering will now. What's the difference between being dead or alive? If you have the guts, break the contract and stop supporting me. Go ask whoever you like in the future. If not, then shut up and answer my question. If I'm pleased, I might even engage with you more often. Got it?" This damn old bastard. Looking at the director playing rogue in front of her, the doe couldn't help but scrape the stone tablet of the cemetery in anger, but indeed had no leverage. She had to swallow her pride and said, "That Leon, since he returned from you, he has disrupted our operations 3 times, destroyed the Kralik Kingdom, turned Xue Xiao and Black Owl against us, and nearly devoured Dongya alive." As the doe continued to explain, the look on the old man's face first turned from curiosity to surprise, then from surprise to shock, and finally to great confusion. Could that guy who couldn't comprehend an abnormal object? Didn't Olivia mention last time that he hadn't been with the cleanup bureau for long? Have the Slaughter King Association gone so far as to research how to deal with him? Is that stupid kid growing too fast? In any case, he poses a significant threat to us. After briefly recounting Leon's actions and their negative impact on the Slaughter King Association, the doe patiently said, "I've answered your question. Now it's your turn to answer mine. Iron Badger, what abnormal object did you give him? How can he directly strip the King of Nightmares' authority? And what's with that nearly invincible undying body?" The abnormal object I gave him was a small fork that made people dream, a snakeskin scroll for forcefully exchanging others' abnormal objects. Lastly, a pair of gloves that would hurt the user when hitting others. None of these abnormal objects have to do with the undying body or the ability to strip the King of Nightmares' authority. It's all nonsense. His core abnormal object definitely isn't from me. However, even though it's unrelated to me, I can't just bluntly say that. I have a slight idea. That kid's case is indeed special. He left a deep impression on me back then, so, after stroking his chin, the blocky-headed old man's face showed a look of realization, turning to the eager-eyed doe and said with a smile, "It'll cost you extra. This damn old thing." Looking at the shameless smile of the third-generation director, the embodied doe felt a surge of impulse for the 3rd time to make him disappear, but for the sake of the big picture. She suppressed her anger and closed her eyes, saying coldly, "The one you originally made the pact with has already disappeared in the old soil. We are just inheriting your agreement with the Slaughter King Association, and have no power to modify specific clauses, so the cost cannot increase. Only one question per 20 years. Then why don't you just ask separately?" Shooting a glance at the patient embodied doe, the third-generation director, in great spirits, said with a chuckle, "How about this? I'll give you a free question. I've crafted 3 abnormal objects for him, so you can ask what the first one is, what the second one is, and what the third one is. Wouldn't that effectively increase the price to 60 years? I should never have taken this task. Extremely regretful." She pawed the ground, snorted loudly, and then, under the smug gaze of the third-generation director, she grimaced and spoke. "In the name of official member Elk of the Slaughter King Association, in accordance with the covenant set on the code, I initiate 3 questions to member Iron Badger. For every question answered truthfully, the Slaughter King Association will extend his life by 20 years at no cost." As the embodied doe recited coldly, the sound of chisel carving into stone tablets echoed, and 3 lines of cuneiform writing, each the size of a bean, appeared horizontally. Then, as if animated, they penetrated the square-headed old man's mouth, engraving onto his tongue and throat. These words are really ugly." He stuck out his tongue, looked at the countless bean-sized true word markings upon it, and the third-generation director disdainfully curled his lips before answering. "I crafted 3 abnormal objects for Leon in total. The first, made with the weapon of the Lord of Lustful Dreams, is the Lust Dream Invader, mainly used to invade dreams or pull others into the dream realm. The second one is called the Unfair Snake Pact, stewed from the tale of the Goddess of Wealth, which enforces abnormal object exchanges under certain conditions. The third one, made from Aquarius's, At this point, the square-headed old man's cheeks twitched slightly as if his tongue had been sharply jabbed, and looking surprised, he spat out the bloody foam and, after pondering a bit, continued with a face of helplessness. The third abnormal object was crafted from part of the former Aquarius director's soul, combined with thorough wort nettle, into the Hand of Screams. When struck, even the true god would scream in pain. Yes, that's all the abnormal objects I crafted for him. Speaking of which, this agreement is really stiff. Even omitting former would determine I was lying. Damn it! Paying no mind to the third-generation director's complaints, after hearing the information about the 3 abnormal objects and memorizing it well, the embodied doe couldn't help but curse, then questioned angrily, "You are not honest. Where's the essential undying body and authority extraction? Why aren't they included here?" "That's another matter." Glancing at the furious embodied doe, the square-headed old man's lips suddenly curved into a dazzling smile, then with exaggerated gestures, said, "I'll give you one more free piece of information, that Leon trained here with me." Cough, cough. Cough, 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 cough. Suddenly seeming to run out of breath, the third-generation director broke into a wild fit of coughing, gathering himself before seriously replying. "Besides asking for my help in crafting abnormal objects the last time he came here, he used rare materials I provided to craft 5 abnormal objects himself. So, do you want to ask 5 more questions?" Leon Lane crafted abnormal objects himself? Upon hearing the third-generation director's words, the embodied doe hesitated briefly and shook her head cautiously. "I won't ask. He's just a beginner. Even with your guidance, he certainly couldn't create anything good." "Nonsense." Upon hearing the embodied doe's words, the square-headed old man immediately flared up, slapping his tombstone with great force. "Who the hell guided him? I didn't guide him at all. That guy learned nothing about refining from me. Damn." After spitting out some expletives in irritation, the third-generation director, punished for lying, spat out the bloody foam from his mouth and grimly said, "Fine. I admit I did teach him a little, and he produced something that opened my eyes wide. That kid's talent in Taurus Palace secret techniques is absolutely unique, unmatched in the Cleanup Bureau's entire history. And the 5 abnormal objects he crafted himself, using a large amount of rare material under my guidance, possess almost unparalleled mysterious abilities. In terms of uniqueness, they exceed even most numbered abnormal objects. Examining the third-generation director's mouth and seeing that the code wasn't triggered, the embodied doe couldn't help but inhale sharply, her deer eyes filled with shock. Unique, unparalleled, surpassing most numbered abnormal objects. After just learning for 2 or 3 months, could Leon's refining talent really be this astonishing? See, everything I said was true. He stuck out his tongue a couple of times, letting the embodied doe inspect the code on it. Regretful, the third-generation director grimly said, "In any case, I can assure you that the abnormal objects crafted by Leon's own hands are definitely something you've never seen in your lifetime, nor anyone in the Slaughter King Association, and will undoubtedly shock you greatly. Alright, the specific conditions are the same as before, still 1 question per abnormal object, so 5 questions total for 100 years. Do you want this information?" Such precious information. How could I not want it? Recalling the horrendous descriptions from the third-generation director's mouth, the embodied doe nearly blurted out her acceptance. However, recalling the previous deceit, she hesitated for a moment, then squinted her 3 pairs of deer eyes and said, "I am indeed interested in this information, but you must first tell me whether his undying body and authority extraction abilities are included in those 5 abnormal objects." Ha ha! Facing the embodied doe's inquiry, the third-generation director coldly laughed, then reached out to grasp an imaginary zipper near his lips, gently pulling from left to right. "From now on, I'm not saying anything else. Ask whatever you want." Damn it! This old thing really intends to trick me again. Seeing the square-headed old man's clear intent to deceive, the embodied doe stomped her hooves in resentment, instinctively wanting to refuse this deal. But thinking back on the third-generation director's extremely exaggerated yet proven true descriptions, she finally gritted her teeth and opened her mouth again. "In the name of official member Elk of the Slaughter King Association, in accordance with the covenant set on the code, I initiate 5 questions to member Iron Badger." A bizarre space filled with gray mist, an evil long table made of bones, various shadowy figures of different shapes, numerous masked members. Everyone who can make it is already here. In a gathering place that perfectly fits the traditional style of villains, the humanoid silhouette sitting at the head of the long table first scanned the attendees before clapping his hands vigorously and proclaiming loudly, "Ladies and gentlemen, the purpose of this meeting is to inform you all of 3 messages." Upon hearing the white snake masked man's words, the members of the Slaughter King Association, who were in the midst of conversation, immediately quieted down and turned their gazes toward him. The first message is that Aquarius's scheme has already succeeded. Throwing out a heavy bombshell as soon as he spoke, the white snake masked man smiled as he faced the surprised members of the Slaughter King Association and said, "He has already replaced the director of Taurus and become the current palace sitter of the Watcher's Palace. According to our agreement with him, any forewarning messages about us will be intercepted by him and not reach the cleanup bureau. Even if it can't be blocked, it will be delayed as much as possible. So the most troublesome forewarning ability of the Watcher's Palace is sealed just like that." Upon hearing this, the members of the Slaughter King Association couldn't help but feel delighted. In our past actions, the most troublesome and dangerous opponent was the unavoidable surveillance of the Watcher's Palace. Once the disaster caused reached a certain level, the Watcher's Palace would send the message to the Cleanup Bureau more than half a year in advance. Sometimes, even before we have taken action or discussed a plan, the Cleanup Bureau would be fully armed and ready, just waiting to close the net when the time comes. To rashly move forward would almost be like delivering ourselves to death. Now that Aquarius has become the palace sitter, without the foresight from the Watcher's Palace, no matter how strong the Cleanup Bureau is, they wouldn't be as comprehensively guarded as before. Our opportunities have finally come. Ladies and gentlemen, please quiet down a little. After the excited members of the Slaughter King Association whispered among themselves for a moment, the white snake masked man clapped his hands once more and smiled as he said, Besides the Watcher's Palace matter, there's a second piece of good news to inform you of today. Due to Aquarius's previous attack, which engaged a significant amount of the Cleanup Bureau's resources, our operations in the Northern Kingdom, the Witch Kingdom, and the Thousand Sails Maritime Country have progressed very successfully. Especially in the Northern Kingdom, the Cleanup Bureau's oversight of Rihe City has lapsed because its director was transferred from the Aquarius branch. Even if we do nothing from now on, the entire Rihe City will self-destruct in just 1 month's time. Could it be going so smoothly? Upon hearing the White Snake Masked Man's second message, the members of the Slaughter King Association were almost boiling over with excitement, even if everyone was masked. The intense enthusiasm was uncontrollably emanating from everyone. Although this message wasn't as shocking as the lockdown of the Watcher's Palace, it was still a once-in-a-millennium piece of good news. From the current situation, if these 3 branches of the royal family, no, as long as 2 more branches of the royal bloodline are cut off, the power of the Watcher's Palace will be significantly weakened, and true god-level beings can enter and exit the mortal realm freely. And the most challenging step to break open the dam is to open the first gap. Once a large number of true gods can descend freely, given the current state of the Cleanup Bureau, the remaining royal bloodlines will inevitably be snuffed out one by one over time. By that time, the Watcher's Palace will definitely degrade repeatedly until it completely reverts to its original state, and the ever-failing Cleanup Bureau will inevitably retreat step by step until it is completely overrun. All right. After allowing the members of the Slaughter King Association to engage in chaotic exchanges for a while, the White Snake Masked Man finally spoke to stop the discussion, then solemnly said, "Although I don't wish to pour cold water on such a moment, I still must tell you that the final message today is undeniably bad news. Do you still remember the cleaner named Leon Lane? Leon Lane?" Upon hearing the White Snake Masked Man's words, the woman sitting to his left, wearing a black cat mask, couldn't help but react slightly before frowning and asking, "The one who incited the Black Owl to destroy the Kralik Kingdom and falsely blame it on us? Has he done something recent?" "It's not that he's done something. It's that he's grown a bit too fast." After glancing sideways at the black cat, the White Snake Masked Man said, "This time, Donya and Aquarius went down together and had a bit of a run-in with Leon. The result was that Leon somehow forcibly captured the authority that should have belonged to the King of Nightmares and almost took out Donya. It wasn't that I was almost taken out." A raspy, eerie voice sounded from across the black cat woman. The Raven Masked Man, who hadn't spoken since the beginning of the gathering and was the only one not part of the revelry, couldn't help but raise his hand and spoke with a face full of lingering fear. "I was almost eaten by him. That Leon is simply, how should I put it to you all? I was already swallowed by him. If Aquarius hadn't pulled me out in time, I would have been eaten alive by him." Eating a true god alive. Are cleaners this crazy now? Watching Donya, whose body was subtly trembling, the mental shock obvious, the members of the Slaughter King Association calmed down somewhat. Then someone cautiously probed, "So, is he the next cancer director? From your description, it sounds like he's trying to use the cancer secret technique to swallow you whole and trap you in his abdominal prison. No, absolutely not like that." The Raven Masked Man shook his head upon hearing this, his face full of lingering fear as he said, "I noticed no secret technique. That person just purely wanted to eat me. The feeling he gave off, I don't even know how to tell you, it's like I'm a walking bone passing by, and he is a guard dog that's been starving for a long time, eating with complete justification." At this point, seemingly recalling the horrifying scene back then, the Raven Masked Man shuddered involuntarily, then spoke with eyes full of fear. "You have no idea." The look on his face didn't seem to see me as a god, nor did he look at me with fear, hatred, or anything else like the other cleaners do. In his eyes, it's as if I am a slab of meat, born to be eaten by him. He didn't hesitate the slightest bit, just grabbed me like that and stuffed me into his mouth without a second thought. Even after swallowing me, he smacked his lips,